First and foremost, brothers, Jazakallah khair for coming out this evening. I know it's a weekday, and to attend a course, especially after maybe a long day of work, school, university, it's not easy, especially when you want to go and spend time with family as well. So the fact that you're here shows commitment on your part, inshallah. That being said, I'd also like to apologize for me being slightly late, because I tried to factor in for the traffic, but London traffic is always that bad, right? And it ends up being worse than you expect, so we got stuck, subhanAllah. Alhamdulillah, we're here. We're going to do this course. Now, let me give you a bit of a quick background and a few things to keep in mind before we start. Number one, this particular course, it normally runs for a day to 2 days. Okay? So that means we only have 3 hours or 2.5 hours. I'm going to give you a condensed version of the course, inshallah, right? But that being said, you're going to get enough that you can practically use in your da'wah. Okay? And one of the intentions you should have today for coming on this course is to think about where you're going to implement this content and how you're going to get involved in the da'wah, right? Because the last thing you want, brothers, is for this to be just another course where you attend, you gain some information, you internalize it, you maybe feel good at certain parts, you may use bits and pieces, but a week or two later you forgot about it. Right? You're not using it anymore, and eventually you forget everything that we covered. Okay? So you want to, even from now, right from the beginning, you want to start thinking about where you're going to use this content in your day-to-day lives. How you're going to get involved in the da'wah. Now that may be joining Brother Ansar and setting up a new team. Inshallah, and I'm assuming that's something you're looking to do, you're already in the process of doing, you have a team already. Or it may be, it's not a part of your personality to be out on the streets and give da'wah, but it may be that you can use this to speak to your neighbors, right? Or your work colleagues or your friends. You may do more of a one-to-one type of da'wah. Or it may even be that you're not just good, you just don't enjoy speaking to people. Maybe you've got another skill. You can communicate through writing, doing blogs online, maybe something else, right? So really start thinking of how you can use this content, inshallah. Okay? Now that being said, the very first thing I want to do, also I'm going to be skipping some slides, so don't worry, inshallah, right? I'm going to only be covering the things that we really need to cover. Okay, let's start with this. Why attend a da'wah training course from your perspective? Any answers? So why are you here today? Share your reasons. Yes, brother.
Oh no.
A typical Pakistani answer. Yeah. Some freebies somewhere, yeah? Yeah, that's another question.
It's like getting the tool set for what you want to do. So for anyone who's working or got a job, like a carpenter needs tools to do the job. So for Muslims who want to give da'wah, they need the right tools to be able to give the da'wah.
Brilliant answer. What was your name, brother, sir?
Akmal.
Akmal. Okay, I'm going to try to remember your names too. Yes, brother.
To get knowledge.
Say your name first, brother, so we'll know.
Abbas Ibrahim.
Abbas Ibrahim, brother Abbas, yes.
To get knowledge of the deen.
Yep.
First for yourself.
Okay.
And then give it further to Muslim and non-Muslims. And to just to expand Islam. Make sure you're giving the right
information. Yeah, the right da'wah.
Not the wrong da'wah.
Yes.
So that's why it's important to attend this one.
Jazakallah khair, brother Abbas. Brilliant. Anyone else? Someone had yes, brother.
Every time I'm at work,
yeah,
all the non-Muslim colleagues, they ask me questions about Islam. So if I attend this da'wah training course,
yes,
it will help me answer their questions properly. And maybe one day, you never know, that will trigger them to want to revert to Islam.
Absolutely brilliant. Anyone else? Anything different? Yes, brother.
To meet people and to get barakah, because things are happening where you're going to get blessed.
Brilliant. Absolutely. We're gonna see that being involved in the da'wah is probably one of the most rewarding acts you can do as a Muslim. Anything else? Okay, brilliant. Alhamdulillah, good to know that. So there's a few course objectives, some things to keep in mind that we will be trying to gain from the next couple of hours, inshallah. Now, number one, we're going to try to understand and appreciate why da'wah should be a part of our everyday life and how easy it is to make it a part of everyday life, inshallah. the huge benefits and rewards of gaining da'wah. Number 3, to gain confidence to speak to anyone about Islam. Right? Because sometimes we have this thing in our heads that giving da'wah is for a certain group of people, certain individuals who have a certain level of experience and certain, a certain knowledge set, if you like, in their heads. No. Giving da'wah is very, very easy. There's some things you need to keep in mind, but generally speaking, giving da'wah is very, very easy and every single person can do it, inshallah. Number 4, how to connect with non-Muslims. Very important, especially in our context of the times that we live in, especially with all of the sort of misinformation that's out there about Islam. Number 5, develop sincerity for the da'wah. This is probably the most important aspect of today's course and us going forward from here as well, inshallah. Quick note, this is a foundational course and there is no deep philosophical discussion at this level. Okay? Now, this doesn't detract from what we're covering today. If anything, something we're going to appreciate is that what we cover today is more than sufficient for the da'wah. Okay? Well, there's this misconception that some people have that you need to be a philosopher or you need to know deep, philosophical, rational arguments to give da'wah to people. You don't. Giving da'wah is very simple. The message of Islam is very fitri. It's very natural to the human being. Right? And it's very easy to understand. And of course, if Allah's going to reveal a religion, a way of life that's for the whole of humanity, it's got to be something that's understood by every single person at all different levels, right? So the regular person on the street and even the professor at university. Okay? So we're going to see it's very, very easy to engage in the da'wah and we should keep it simple. So, few questions for myself, some background from you guys. Who here has been involved in da'wah before? Any form of da'wah. This doesn't have to be street da'wah. Okay, a few of us. 2, 3 of us, 4 of us. Okay, brilliant. Another question is, from your da'wah experience, the brothers that put their hands up, how have you generally found giving da'wah? Has it been easy? Has it been difficult?
That's none, really. It depends on your target audience.
Okay.
And what you're hoping to achieve.
Okay. Anyone else want to share any other experiences? Last one? Yes, brother.
Like, I've got some non-Muslims that and some of the questions they come up with and you're stuck.
Yeah.
They're like, you come for, basically I came here to answer their questions so that I know what I'm going away with knowledge that, they say, I see Muslims drink, I see Muslims enter in the pub or, betting and all that, what's the difference between you? You want to ask rational, they ask you rational questions and you've got no answer to back up with.
Yeah. Okay. Inshallah. So if I was to ask, who here feels comfortable right now, as they stand, in sharing the message of Islam? In a da'wah context. Okay, brilliant. Alhamdulillah. Okay, let's start with this. What is da'wah? What does da'wah mean to you? Invitation? Okay. To invite. Anyone else?
Conveying the message of Islam.
Conveying the message of Islam, yeah. Anything else?
It's also to do with building a relationship with another member of society. And you can convey the message and have that societal impact on them.
Okay. So it's that connection with the society and sharing something with them. Brilliant. All of those things are correct. It's to call, right, and to invite someone to Islam. Right? Da'wah means to call, but in the Islamic context in particular, it's the invitation to human beings for them to come back to the worship of the Creator. To come back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and worship Him alone. Now, something I want to plant here, and something we'll develop as we go along. Who here is from Pakistan? Bangladesh? Okay, most of us. And if I'm not mistaken, even in Bengali you have the word dawat. Yes? And as far as I remember, if I'm not mistaken again, it holds the same meaning as it does in Urdu, right?
Yeah.
So what does dawat mean?
Invitation.
Okay, invitation to food, right? But how does calling someone to a dawat differ from calling someone to a meal? There is a subtle nuance here. What's the difference? Just a meal and a dawat. What's the difference?
I'd say it's a technical difference because ultimately you're inviting someone to receive something. And whether that's a message or that's something else, you're going to go away feeling, I don't know, fulfilled.
Okay. So your intention is that they leave feeling fulfilled and humble, right? But when you specifically call them to a da'wah, how does that differ from calling someone to just a meal? Like,
tidy up the house, try and present the room.
okay, so a da'wah is something a bit more what? It's a bit more formal, yeah? It's a bit more lavish, it's a bit more grand, right? So it's like a big feast you're inviting someone to, right? Now another question. If you're calling someone to a da'wah, how would you invite them? Just think about this for a second. How would you invite them? What would your characteristics be? What would your tone of voice be? How would your body language be?
Equal.
Yeah, and this is assuming you genuinely want them to come. Because you know there's a type of invite where it's for the sake of invite, yeah? But a genuine invite, like you genuinely want someone to come, how would you invite them?
Best behavior.
Best behavior, yeah? What else?
You go to them and personally invite them.
Yeah, you personally invite them, would you pull them by the collar and say, you know, come, you wouldn't do that, right? How would you do it? What would your mannerisms be?
Talk to him gently, slowly.
Yeah? Gentle, soft speech, absolutely.
Characteristics and etiquettes.
Absolutely, good characteristics, good etiquette, all of these things, right? Now I want you to juxtapose this, I want you to compare this now to calling people to Allah. That's how we would call people to a meal in our houses. Therefore, how should we call people to Allah? And how do we see people calling people to Allah these days? Yeah, who's seen videos from Speaker's Corner on YouTube? Yeah, most of us. Yeah? Generally speaking, obviously there's some really good brothers there doing some really good da'wah. Generally speaking, what's the type of style of invite that's going on? Aggressive. Exactly. There's fights, there's boxing, there's almost, punch-ups that are going on.
Verbal boxing.
Yeah, verbally, even if there's no fists involved, there's verbally, even the way we come across is very aggressive. Right? It's all about winning the debate, winning the argument. Is that correct?
No.
We don't need a sheikh to tell us this, right? You can just process this in our minds. Inviting someone to a meal, we'll do it in a beautiful way, but when we're inviting to Allah, look at the way we're doing it currently. Yeah? And therefore, how should we be doing it? Start to think about this now, inshallah, right? Because a lot of what we discuss today is going to be about this. It's a very big principle, and people that sort of study and are experts in the sort of field of influence these days, one thing they will always tell you is if you want someone to do something you want them to do, a lot of it's about how you approach them and how you tell them to do it, right? So what you told them to do is important, what you share with them is important, but how you do that is as important, right? So it's how you deliver the message. The message of Islam is very clear, very fitri, as we've said, it makes sense. But how we deliver it is going to play a big role in it, whether they understand it and accept it or not. Right? So and it's a big responsibility on our shoulders, because we will be accountable for this on the day of judgment. Right? Again, a few other ayat from the Quran, which you guys can go and read up yourselves, inshallah. One is from the 16th chapter, verse 125, the other is from the 3rd chapter, verse 104. So, our duty, another point, our duty is to convey the message, not to convert. Right? This is another misconception that we sometimes have, which is when we give da'wah, our end goal is that we ensure that someone accepts Islam. They take the shahada. Right? That's not our objective. We have to have this clear, brothers, in our heads. Our objective solely is to deliver the message to people. And to deliver it in the best way possible. Right? To ensure everything in our capacity, that we do everything we can to convey the message in the best way possible, and then leave the rest to Allah. Allah guides who He wills. Right? Our job is not to force someone or encourage someone or push someone to become Muslim. Right? Yes, there's this sense of urgency, there's this sense of concern, there's this sense of I want you to become Muslim, but you don't translate that over to now, okay, you better become Muslim, or I'm going to make sure you become Muslim. That's in the hands of Allah. Our job is simply to convey the message. And obviously we have many beautiful stories from the Quran to reflect on this particular point. Take the example of Nuh alayhi salam. How many years did he give out?
950.
950, right? How many followers did he have after 950 years?
13.
Sorry? 13? 13. Not many, right? There's a few numbers that we have given, but what we know is a handful, right? And I really put that into context for a second. Let's try to really understand this. The average lifespan today is how long? 60, 70 years. For us Pakistanis and Bengalis, we struggle to get there as well, because of our diets. Yeah? But the point is, 60, 70 years, and you know, that's about it. 950 years, that's like 10, 12 times that, our lifetime. And this, we would do other things in our life along with the da'wah, even if we're doing da'wah regularly. But the job of the prophets is solely da'wah, to invite people. Now imagine calling people for 950 years, and we know Nuh alayhi salam, he called people publicly, privately, right? In big gatherings, you know, in a communal way, individually, by night, by day, in every way, shape or form. This was his thing from when he woke up in the morning to when he went to sleep at night. And yet, this is a prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. His da'wah is going to be far better than any of us, right? Yet, after 950 years, only a handful of people became Muslim. Okay? Now let me ask you a question. Was Nuh alayhi salam successful in his mission? Was he successful? Yes. So what does that tell us? Here is a prophet of Allah who is successful in doing his job. Yet he has a very few followers after 950 years. What does that tell us? It's not a numbers game. It's not about a shahada tally. It's not about how many people become Muslim. It's about, are you effectively delivering the message with the abilities and tools that Allah has given you? Right? That's what we need to keep in mind, brothers. Yeah? So we have to remove this sort of view that, oh, it's about shahadas. It's about ensuring people take shahada and become Muslim. Yes, we want to encourage people, but our job is to deliver the message in the clearest way possible, inshallah. Another key principle to keep in mind is be holistic in your da'wah. Right? Now you'll get people that fall on both ends of the spectrum. Okay? On one end of the spectrum, you'll have individuals that say, just give da'wah, don't worry about gaining knowledge, don't worry about being a good person in society, don't worry about all of these things. Just go and share the message, do whatever you want. Right? Then you get the other end of the spectrum, where people will say, just be a good person, and don't give that direct call. Right? Remember, Islam is a middle path. There's a balance in every facet of Islam. Even when it comes to giving da'wah, there's a balanced way. And the balance we need to try and maintain is that we give the da'wah, we invite people verbally, but we also back it up with good actions. Being a good person, living by what we're saying. Right? There's a beautiful verse in the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in chapter 41 verse 33, and here's a beautiful thing. Allah is asking you a rhetorical question. Right? And who is better in speech? وَمَنْ أَحْسَنُ قَوْلًا. Now think about this for a second. When Allah asks a question, those brothers that are studying grammar, when Allah asks a question in the Quran, a rhetorical question, what does that mean? From a grammatical perspective.
There's no answer to what you say.
Not necessarily.
It means maybe your intention to be more concentrated.
Good, so that's one point. If Allah is asking a question, whenever human beings are asked a question, what happens? Automatically we start to think of an answer. It's just human psychology, right? So when Allah is asking a question, first thing that's happening is straight away our brains start to work. Okay, and who is better in speech? Right, than the one who calls to Allah. And when Allah is asking that question, we're thinking, okay, who is better in speech? We're processing it ourselves. Okay, what's the other thing? In classical Arabic, when you generally ask a rhetorical question, particularly in the Quran, when Allah asks a question, rhetorically, what does that mean?
Does it mean Allah is challenging you?
Yeah, as to what?
Like, if you think you're better than me, so like, you know there was one where he says about the ayah, if you try making ayah...
That's slightly different. Yes, brother.
Is it like pondering and contemplation?
Yes, we are pondering, we are contemplating, absolutely. But another thing is, what Allah is saying in other words, there is no one better. Right? So through the use of the rhetorical device, we're being told there is no one better in speech except the one that calls to Allah. Right? Now, one thing we should take from this, brothers, if we reflect upon this, is that here is an amazing opportunity that Allah has given us for those of us that can speak, that have speech, because there's brothers we know and there's people in this world that can't even speak. They lose their ability to speak. Right? They're born like this. If you can speak, and Allah has given you this blessing, and it's working, and we use it, there is no better way of using it than to call to Allah. Right? No better way of using it. And you know what's really amazing about speech, brothers, is what's the main muscle that's used in speaking?
Your tongue.
Your tongue. Now, what's very interesting about the tongue is, the rest of the body, say if you went for a 3-mile walk right now, what would happen? You get tired. Your legs will start to ache, right? If you were to hold your arms out just like this to the sides for 5 minutes, what's going to start happening? Your shoulders are going to start aching. Yeah. The body fatigues. The muscles fatigue in the body. But what's interesting about the tongue is the tongue doesn't tire like the rest of the muscles of the body. Like, how many times have you spoken since this morning? Just think about it. Who can give me a number? We can never count. We do it all day long, right? Till we go to sleep at night. It's such an amazing blessing. We speak, and you don't get tired. Now, why not use such an easy tool that Allah's given us to call to His way and gain the reward? Right? It's not like Allah saying go for a 6-mile run every day and that will be counted as part of your da'wah. Right? Most of us could never do that. Right? Just speak. You speak all the time. Use your speech to call to Allah. Right? Just use it in the right way. And then what does Allah say? And who is better in speech than the one who invites to Allah and does righteous actions? Good deeds. Right? You want to back up your speech with good actions too. Right? How many times, brothers, have you been to Jummah? Right? And the Imam is making the khutbah and he's delivering it. And there's a brother in the back waving at the Imam. Yeah? Waving away, and they're distracting the Imam. And eventually he gets a word in. And he says, number plate so-and-so, can you please move your car because you're blocking Mrs. Smith's drive? How many times has that happened in our lifetimes? Yeah? Think about this. Just take the example of Mrs. Smith for a second. She's a 70-year-old lady. She wants to go shopping, but her driveway is being blocked. By who? By a Muslim who wants to go pray. And is selfish enough to block someone's drive. Now imagine the same Mrs. Smith on 2 days later, say on the Tuesday, goes to the high street, and she sees Brother Ansar on a da'wah table. How is she going to feel towards him? Would she want to listen to him?
No.
No. What's going to happen in her mind? Muslims disrupt me every Sunday, every Friday. Here is a Muslim on a table. It's the same for her, right? How difficult is his da'wah going to become because of our actions? Yeah. And this is happening all over the place, right? So we have to have that holistic approach. And this is a communal thing. This is not an individual thing. Communally, we have to support each other and support the da'wah. We have to make sure that we represent what Islam teaches, especially to the non-Muslim community. Because they already have, you guys know this, they already think 101 things about us, which are not positive. Right? So we have to change these views that people have about us. And then finally, Allah says, and they say that indeed we are of the Muslims. What do you get from this part of the ayah? And those that say indeed we are of the Muslims. Just reflect upon that for a second. What do you get from this?
That we are in submission to Allah.
Okay. But announcing that, what does that teach us? What do we learn from that? Yes, brother.
To be a Muslim, your speech must be righteous.
Yes. But you announcing that you are a Muslim. What does that tell us?
Basically, you're displaying your characteristic to that person.
Yes, you're telling them who you are. Not necessarily them, but generally speaking. One thing we learn from that is that someone who is a true believer and that really wants to engage for the sake of Allah in the da'wah, they're not shy of who they are. And they're not shy of their identity. And again, this is something we all struggle with. We have 101 inferiority complexes, brothers. Yeah? When we go to job interviews, when we go to university, when we go to schools, we want to shy away. We don't want people to ask us about our religion. Yeah? We don't want people to ask us about, what faith do you follow? We tremble thinking about, I have to suggest that I may need to pray 5 times a day. Right? We all go through this. I've been through this. Right? But we have to have the confidence in what Allah has given us. And honestly, brothers, Allah's blessed us with something that the public out there are desperate for. They need this message, right? But for us to carry and deliver it, we have to first have the confidence ourselves to own it and live by it, inshallah. Right? So, generally speaking, what we're trying to get across is have a holistic approach to the da'wah. Live what you're saying, be confident with what you have, emulate this and share this through your characteristics, and then deliver the message through speech as well. This is understanding holistic. Okay, some prerequisites now of the da'wah. Okay? The most fundamental thing we need to understand, or the key that we need to have as far as knowledge is concerned, is knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. if we don't know who we're calling to, how can we effectively make the call? We need to know who Allah is. We need to know who Allah is. This is very, very important. And yes, this may be, we may think, okay, this is very simple. I'm a Muslim, I know who Allah is. But the way I want you to think about it right now is I don't from a Muslim perspective. I want you to think about knowing Allah from a non-Muslim perspective. Right? How would you convey who Allah is to a non-Muslim in a way they can understand? Because we can easily understand, we can easily say Allah is one, you know, He is all powerful, you know, He's the creator of everything. But how would you convey this to non-Muslims? Yes, brother.
One question
Yes, brother.
I do get asked is, who is God?
Yeah.
Where did God come from? Like, you know, we say, oh, God created everything. God came just as He exists. But then, with that, it comes with science. Do you understand?
Yeah.
Like,
We'll address that as well, inshallah. We'll address that. Because once you understand who Allah is, most of these questions disappear in you. Because people can make sense of what's going on, right? But the real question is, are we clarifying and conveying who Allah is clearly to the non-Muslims? That's the most important thing we need to do. Now, obviously, we know that over the centuries, our scholars have given us, you know, a breakdown of understanding the oneness of Allah to help make it easy for us and to help sort of tackle the misconceptions that have been there throughout history regarding Allah, right? Whether this be through philosophers and their influence into the Islamic tradition, or some aspects of it, or whether it be just other groups that had certain views regarding Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What the scholars did was that they clarified or they put in place a way that we can understand the oneness of Allah very clearly and very easily. Right? Now, who here has done a course on Tawheed? Or read a book? Yeah? Or watched some sort of lectures or done some sort of short course? Most of us, right? So normally when the scholars break it down, they break it down into these three categories. And we know it's the oneness of Allah in respects to His Lordship, the oneness of Allah in respects to His names and attributes, and the oneness of Allah in respects to worship. Okay? And these are the general three categories that are broken down, and through this we understand Allah's oneness, right? But the way I want us to understand this today is from a non-Muslim perspective. How can we get across Allah's oneness very clearly and very simply to a non-Muslim? Okay? Now, when we talk about Allah's Lordship, let's do this together. What do we mean? So what do we mean by Lordship?
So Allah is the creator. He created
Good.
us.
So Allah is the creator, number one. Primarily, right? Allah is the creator. What else?
He's the owner of everything.
He's the owner. Brilliant. In Arabic, what is this category called?
Rububiyyah.
Yes. Right? So this is the category of Rububiyyah. Allah's oneness in respects to His Lordship. So He's the creator, He's the owner. What else?
He's the sustainer.
He's the sustainer. Okay. Anything else you like that?
He's the one that we worship. Oh, sorry, no, that's
That's it. That'll come later. Anything else? So creator, maintainer, sustainer, protector. Okay. Cherisher. Yeah. Nourisher. But when we do this, brother, see, it's happening here as well, and we all have this problem. It's almost like the archaic English channel starts. Nourisher, sustainer, maintainer. Try to think of modern simple English words to describe these things if you can. Right? So when you say Allah is the creator, how can you simplify this?
Well, just play a slightly different thing here. You said think from a non-Muslim angle, right?
Yes.
So when one should give da'wah, I think one of the concepts we need to look at is first of all understand the person you're talking to.
Yes.
I don't mean that degrading way. I mean there are different people from different walks of life. If you were talking to somebody who was in a difficulty of life, perhaps they're suffering from an illness, or loss of somebody who died, or something like that, you bring it at an angle slightly different. You don't start talking about, God should make it all right, because they don't even know who God is right now. But you may say, oh, that's awful, if somebody that's happened. But you know, normally there may be goodness coming out of it.
Yes.
So you need to sort of use a speech to them, and then find a trigger point almost. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. What you've said is that we're going to get to that inshallah. So basically understanding who we're speaking to and what is a human being. Right, we're gonna have that discussion as well. Yeah, we're gonna get to. Right now, we're just covering some of the preliminary things that we need to know first and foremost. So we have that background knowledge. So when we're out there, we have that inshallah. Right. So when it comes to Allah's lordship, He's the creator, meaning He's the one that made everything. Right. He started everything. He maintains everything. Anything else anyone wants to add regarding lordship?
He gives life and he takes life.
Okay.
He's the master.
He's the master. Okay, good. So we get the concept here, right? So what we're getting across is that Allah is the only creator, the only one that maintains and takes care, the only one that has power, the only one that provides, and these types of things. Okay? When it comes to Allah's names and attributes, what do we have to try get across? Or what do we need to understand first and foremost for ourselves? So when we say Allah's names and attributes are unique to Him, what do we need to get across? Because I'll give you an example. Say for example, John. You tell John God is merciful, right? John will say, okay, that's good, but I am merciful too, or my mom is merciful too. Therefore, here is something similar between God and my mom, or me. And therefore we share something in common. Can you see how he's got the wrong end of the stick, right? So when we say Allah's names and attributes are unique to Allah, what are we trying to get across here? What do we need to understand and get across?
Is it more to do with the individual's understanding of that particular attribute?
Yes.
Because the person will be comparing his own understanding of his own attributes with something that he cannot see, cannot conceptualize in his mind.
Okay, good, absolutely right. So what are the two things we need to understand and clarify? The first thing is that Allah's names and attributes are unique, and there is nothing that compares to them in any way, shape, or form. Right? So when we say, for example, John is loving, we can't say John is as loving as Allah. Right? That's wrong. Right? And the issue there is, when you say John is as loving as Allah, what you're doing is you're deifying John. You're giving John God-like qualities, which is shirk. Right? You're taking John and you're making him into a God from one perspective. The opposite is true too. You can't also say Allah is as merciful as Steve. That's wrong too. Because now what you're doing now in this case is you're taking Allah, one of His attributes, and you're bringing them down to human level. Right? Which is wrong again. Right? You can't do either of these two things. So what we need to get across to people is that yes, Allah has names and attributes. And we know His names and attributes, and we, for example, in English translation, we say He's the most merciful, the most loving, the more powerful. And yes, the only similarity here, this is what we need to get across, the only similarity is in use of terms, words, language. As far as what these things mean, there's this night and day difference. There is no comparison. Right? So God's mercy is unlike anything you can imagine. Right? There's no comparison to it. Right? Human characteristics, human beings are loving, human beings are merciful, human beings are compassionate, human beings are powerful. But human characteristics and attributes are limited and deficient. Allah's names and attributes are perfect, without deficiency, without flaw. That's what we need to get across. So Allah's names and attributes are perfect, without deficiency, without flaw. Human attributes are deficient and they're flawed. And they're limited. Right? So we need to really clarify this, because this is an area where most Christians may mix things up. Right? This is an area where some atheists may mix things up too. Right? So they may give some of the attributes of Allah to the universe. So an atheist may say, the universe came from nothing, or the universe created itself. When they say that, what are they suggesting? That the universe has intrinsic power. So they've taken the attribute of Allah and they've given it to the universe. Right? So we have to be very clear about these things with Him. Okay? And the final one, which is the easiest one, Allah's oneness in respects to His worship. What do we mean here? Yes, brother.
He alone deserves to be worshipped.
Yeah, he alone deserves to be worshipped, and this is something that naturally flows on from the first 2 points. If Allah is the only creator, the only maintainer, the only sustainer, if Allah is the only one with the most perfect names and attributes, and the only one that's all powerful, and all things belong to Him, then who should we worship? As a rational human being, who should we worship? Should we worship people or things anymore, or created things, or should we worship the Creator? Right? Again, it's a very fitri thing. It's very natural. And some of our scholars even said that to know Allah's existence and that He deserves worship is a part of the fitrah. It's a part of human nature. It's something very natural and intuitive. And obviously, the opposite of this is shirk. We don't need to go into a discussion about that today, inshallah. Now, something to also consider, brothers, before we break now, just one more minute, is how does the knowledge of Allah impact us as du'at? And I'll leave you with this and we'll break on this now. See, knowing Allah's oneness from a very sort of theoretical perspective is a good thing, but it's not going to benefit anyone. It's not going to benefit us first and foremost. We know Allah is one, we know He's the creator, He's the maintainer, He's the one that's all powerful, He's the one that's able to do all things. He is in control of everything. But now, how does that change our lives? That's something we need to ask ourselves. How does that impact our lives? How does that change you? Does that actually, have you really internalized Allah's oneness? Because if you have, what would that mean for your life, and how does your life change? Wouldn't that mean that you're not afraid of anyone or anything else? That you realize Allah is the one that has all power, and therefore you have no worries. You rely upon Allah. Wouldn't that mean that our anxieties and our worries would disappear in life, or should disappear? Because we understand Allah is in control, we don't have to worry. These things that we're worried about, we're anxious about, have no power. They have no intrinsic power. Allah is in control. Right? Wouldn't that mean that we feel a sense of freedom and peace and tranquility? Because we're worshipping the creator of all things, and we're not worshipping created things that have no power and that escape us and leave us. Loving Allah, if we really love Allah more than anything or anyone else, wouldn't that remove the fear of losing the things that you love? It should, shouldn't it? If we really internalize the oneness of Allah, right? So, something for us to do for our homework is to take this point away and to really understand, okay, if I've understood Allah's oneness properly, how is that going to change me from today onwards going forward? Especially if I'm going to be involved in the da'wah, right? So we'll break on that, inshallah, brothers. I think the kids are going to leave now. Yeah. And it's Maghrib as well, so we pray Maghrib at what time should we come?
In 25 minutes.
25 minutes, should we carry?
Yeah, just carry.
Because the kids can, as long as you guys can pay attention, inshallah. Okay. Okay, just quickly, motivations and rewards for da'wah, brothers. Obviously, if you're here today, you're already motivated to, inshallah, give da'wah, but just a small reminder for us all. If you look at this brother on the screen, right? Now look, think of this as da'wah gym, okay? This is where we exercise the da'wah muscles. I want you to be very honest. Switch off the pious button inside. Yeah, I know we're in a masjid, but we're in a training course. I want you to be very honest with me. If you are giving da'wah, say you join Brother Insar's table, Brother Insar goes for biryani for lunch, leaves you at the table alone, you're alone, then no one is there. Many people are walking by the table. This guy, 6'5", proper muscular here, massive guy, with that look on his face, tattooed, is walking towards you, he's looking at you. Would you give him da'wah?
No.
So what would you think? What's going on inside you? He's come to fight me. What do you think of him? What are the things? What's the words going on inside you? What are the descriptions?
Heart beating 150 miles per hour.
Sorry?
Heart beating 150
Okay, so you're getting scared, right? What do you think of him?
He's intimidating.
Okay, he's intimidating. Good, what else?
Just 2 minutes.
He looks racist.
He looks racist. It gives you guys 2 minutes to think about it. Skinhead? Okay, good.
He looks like a Nazi.
Looks like a Nazi, yeah?
Looks like a KKK.
Looks like a KKK, okay. Don't express yourselves, guys, yeah? But let the kids go before it gets any more explicit. Just think about it for a second while the kids go, inshallah.
He looks too old to be
break time in that. These kids are going to walk past me. What they looking at?
They're gonna have nightmares.
He looks like my neighbour.
Looks like a neighbour. May Allah make things easy for you.
He's a nice fellow.
MashaAllah. You'd be surprised. Yeah, you'd be surprised, you know. Don't judge a book by its cover like this.
I think you judge him from the outside and straight away.
Yeah.
Just because of his appearance.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, he's a human being.
Absolutely.
He might have vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
He might have weaknesses. You actually might be a strong person.
Yeah.
But just because he's from 6 to 5, you may have a different skill, intelligence more or less. You know, you can go to the point where you can still cook for. And the way some of the others reacted, run away, and all this sort of stuff, I don't know, maybe I'm different. I don't see it like that. I think the situation is been created in that way for a purpose. And then he's made his own choices. How do you know he's not been lost? How do you know he's making so weak? And that he's gaining all his strength from his tattoos and from his physique. But inside he might be weak as a feather.
Absolutely. You made a really good point, bro. Very, very good point. So like the brother said, and this is the thing, if we sit down and think about this, right, really analyze it, some of us may also come to the same conclusion as Brother Ricky, right? That, okay, this guy on the outside, he has this appearance and he looks like this, but maybe something else is going on. Why does he look like this? What's going on inside his heart? But unfortunately, we don't do that most of the time, most of us. We judge people straight away, right? Most of us do this, right? And like the brother said, this is actually a true, real life case. Oh, that's him off. He took Shahada, became Muslim. Yeah? The same guy. Same guy. Yeah?
I didn't know the same guy.
Same guy. Yeah? He lives in London. Right? Now, I want us to really think about this for a second. Right? Number one, this should motivate us from the perspective that our job is not to go out there and judge people, right? And make an assessment on who should or shouldn't get da'wah. Our job is simply to, like we said, what? What's our job? To convey the message. And that also means to not judge people, right? Just deliver the message. If the person that gave him da'wah also thought like we would think normally, would this have transpired? No, right? This, you can just look at the change on his face. He's got someone you don't want to be around. He looks like the type of guy you want to spend time with if you're feeling down, right? SubhanAllah. But he probably wouldn't have gone through this if it wasn't for someone to think beyond that initial judgment, right? So like Brother Ricky said, very important. Don't make that. Just switch off that judgment when you're out there the best you can, inshallah. Yeah?
Well, just to sort of touch on one other point you mentioned earlier, and I've got to go over it, so I'm contributing now. All your stay till the end. Forgive me for interrupting.
No problem.
But one of the things you said earlier was that, you know, whether you go to work or you go to school or you go to university, and somebody asks you, your parents, you look, and you think, oh, how am I going to get over to telling I'm Muslim, right? You know, but this I see in my walk of life anyway. It's certainly true. But I don't understand where the complexity comes from. But I'll look at that. Secondly, maybe it's just my Sikh background was different. But we're not sort of afraid of anything in that sense, except, no.
Yes.
We're humble inside, but on the outside, we hold our ground. So one of the things that concerns me a lot, and I've seen it for like a few years now, there seems to be a lack of confidence. Generally in the Islamic community, the way people handle themselves, the way they walk themselves, like we should be ashamed of something. We have nothing to be ashamed of, right? And once you start to break that barrier down, then I think you find that people are respectful to you. But actually by being scared of them or not saying anything, you're actually letting yourself down, and you're also letting your Rabb down in a way. Because he's ordered us to be humble inside, but walk with, not with the, force in the ground and, trying to show off, no. But hold your ground. And then people realise what you are, and they will respect you for it.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm just going to add to that actually, and I think the brother's right that the level of confidence in the Muslim generally has gone down.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is forced upon us through the media.
Yeah.
And the portrayal of Muslims in general society that, they shouldn't be, you shouldn't mix with them, you shouldn't talk to them. And the constant bombardment in newspapers and stuff like that, like this is a portrayal of a Muslim who's going to blow you up, who's going to shoot you with a gun, he's going to stab you with a knife. So all that constantly plays on people's minds, which inevitably the general population who are not Muslim, that's their first impression that this is a Muslim, this is how you should view them. But the negative impact is that we're also taking that negative stuff on board.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's now having an impact on our confidence.
Absolutely. As far as reasons, there's probably 100 or more reasons we can list, right? But the key today, what we think about is, do we have any reason to hold on to that sort of negative outlook?
No, because
And how do we change that?
Every time you go out there, you should be thinking, who is with me? Just think of that line alone. Who am I representing and who is with me?
Yes.
The creator of the dunya, the creator of the universe, right? Well, what are you fearing?
Yeah.
That's the bit I don't understand, whether it's a job situation, where I see it at work a lot actually, and this really winds me up, and that's why I'm talking about it. Yeah, and I say, well, come on guys, you need to, there's nothing wrong. Why are you, this preconceived idea, if you don't break it down to the person you work with, or you're sitting next to a desk at your college or university, who is going to break it down?
Yeah.
And the way you do it, the art of doing that, is the key concept, I think, which IERA is teaching.
Yeah. Yeah, and one thing we should all leave with today, one of the things at least, is just to remember the principle that confidence breeds confidence. Yeah. So if you guys become the leaders and walk with that confidence, the Muslims that have these sort of inferiority complexes and things, that's one of the ways of breaking it, right? So I think it's time we start breaking these, inshallah, because that's the only way we can confidently deliver the message effectively to people.
Somebody said here earlier, we're taught not to mix with them, not to talk to them. Somebody said that. Right? Who's saying that to you? Did our Prophet not mix with people of his time? Did our Prophet not speak to the Jews and the Christians? Did he just say, I'm going to walk away from you? So I don't know where that comes from, that teaching is not correct.
Yes. Yeah. But inshallah, we'll get over that, one step at a time, inshallah, right? So we all need to just play our role as best we can in this journey, inshallah. Okay, that being said, let's quickly move on, inshallah, because we've got lots to go through, right? So just quickly, as far as motivational factors, obviously we've gone over this verse already where Allah says, and who is better in speech than the one who calls to Allah? This is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the creator of the heavens and the earth, that's telling us that there is no human being better, at least in speech, than the one who calls to Allah. So the question is, don't we want to be amongst these people that Allah is praising, right? So that's one thing to keep in mind. Let's just do a quick thought experiment, brothers. Who would like to drive this car? Okay. Who would like to own this car? Bunch of pious souls.
I would like to.
Okay, a few of us. Okay. Jazakallah khair, Sheikh, for putting your hand up at the back.
I would like to sell it.
Okay, like to sell it. Okay. What I want you guys to do for a second, guys, I want you to do this for a second. Every single one of us has something in our minds or in our hearts that we want to own at some point in our lives, right? Now, we may not have it right now because we don't have the money or the financial, but if you had the money, we can think about this for a second. If you had unlimited resources of money, unlimited, don't say it, think about the thing you would want to buy. Just think about that thing for a second. Whether it's a mansion, whether it's a palace, whether it's a car, someone once said a bus. I don't know why. But whatever it is, just think about that thing. Yeah. Maybe it's a lifetime ticket to travel the world, whatever it is. Yeah. Once you've got that in your mind, has everyone got something? Yeah. Okay. Look, once you've got that in your mind, just think about this for a second. Imagine you go home tonight, you go to sleep. You wake up in the morning, and as you wake up, the phone's ringing. You pick up the phone, and the person on the phone says to you, you know that thing that you wanted? It's there. It's yours. If it's the car, it's outside. It's parked outside your door. If it's that ticket, world travel ticket you wanted, it's through your post. If it's that mansion, the keys are being posted through your door. Yeah, it's yours. You can keep it. How would that feel? Pretty awesome, yeah? Yeah, pretty amazing. Now imagine you doubted the person a bit, so you thought, I'm going to go check it out. You go, you look out the window, the car's there. You take the keys, go to the location, your house is there. Right? What would you do with that thing? Say it's a car, say it's a mansion, what would you do once you get the keys in your hand? You'll have fun, right? You'll enjoy it, you'll drive it around, right? And now say you're driving it around, the car, you're in your mansion, you're going through the rooms, and you get another call. Right? And the person on the phone says, how's it going? What are you going to say?
Amazing.
Good, brilliant, yeah? Amazing. But say the person says, you know what, it's going to get better. Tomorrow, I'm going to give you another one of these, a different model, a different mansion in another part of the country, another part of the world. And it's yours to keep, free. Is it getting better?
Yes.
Yeah? Wouldn't that be even more amazing? And imagine that he keeps doing this every single day. Right? That would be so amazing for us. Right? Something we would probably just die for. Yeah? Now I want you to juxtapose and compare that to reality for a second, which is that the Prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he said, by Allah, if Allah were to guide one man through you, it will be better for you than the best type of camels. Right? And according to another narration, better for you than everything upon the surface of the earth and everything, the earth itself. Right? I want you to think about this. Let me give you some context. Red camels may not mean much to us today, but red camels were the prized possession at the time of the Prophet. Right? They were like the Ferraris and the Bugattis of the time. Yeah? Even today, in certain deserts, in certain parts of the Saudi region, in Saudi Arabia, there's camel pageants, at least once a year. And camels sell for billions of dollars. $30 billion, $40 billion each camel. Right? That's the value of camels today, 2019. We can only imagine what their value was at the time of the Prophet, when there was no other mode of transportation. Right? And the Prophet's telling us, if Allah guides one person through you, it's better for you than a whole lot of red camels. Not just singular, camels, loads of camels. Right? In other words, if Allah guides one person through you, brothers, is better for you than anything you can imagine. You know that thing you wanted? That dream car, that dream house? It's better than that. It's better than that. Now the question we need to ask ourselves is, do we really believe this? That's the question. What the Prophet of Allah said is the truth. It's more true than us seeing each other right now. It's more true than us seeing our own hands and seeing the world around us right now. Because this comes from Allah. And the Prophet of Allah said that if Allah guides one person through you, it is better for you, for lack of better words, than anything you can imagine. Why wouldn't we want this for you? Right? And if we don't fully believe this and internalize this, then we need to check ourselves and fix that. Right? Because if we truly internalize this reality, we will be dying for the next opportunity to give da'wah to someone and to share the message in the hope that Allah guides someone through us. Right? It's something to really keep in mind, brothers, inshallah. Quickly, another very powerful motivating factor. Now, this is probably for me one of the most motivating things that we find in the Quran as far as the da'wah is concerned. For me, at least, the story that's found in Surah Yasin, verses 13 to 27. Now, let me just paint the picture for you. Allah tells us about a town, a city, a place, right, in history. And this place has people that are not worshipping Allah, that are not following Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now Allah tells us in these verses that Allah sends two messengers to these people. Okay? Now think about this for a second. Question, isn't one messenger sufficient for a community? Of course. The messenger is supported by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the angels. And the power of Allah, right? So one is sufficient. But here Allah sends two. Okay? They obviously are not being heard, people are not listening to them, they're not following them. What does Allah do? What happens next? Does anyone know? Allah sends a third. Now brothers, I want you to picture this for a second. Here is a town, not the whole world, it's a little town, a village, an area, a city, where Allah has sent three messengers to. Three messengers are there amongst the community, sharing the message of Islam. Yeah? Calling people to become Muslim. Then what do we get? What's the next part of the story? Who remembers? They're refusing, fine, they're not listening to them, but what happens then?
A man came from town and said,
Now here's what's very beautiful. Exactly. Now we hear of a man, Allah says a man comes rushing from a furthest part of the city. Right? Now think about it, there's a man. A man. Allah knows what his name is, we don't know. Some of the Mufassirin have given us some clues as to who it may be, but irrelevant because Allah didn't mention his name. The Quran is perfect, brothers. Allah has given us exactly what we need in the Quran. If his name is not being mentioned here, his name is not relevant. What he's about to do is what's relevant. Right? It's the action that he's about to do which is relevant. Allah doesn't even want you to focus on his name. Name means nothing. The action is what's important. Because you know, we go by names. Yeah? This guy is so-and-so, this is Mufti so-and-so, this is a great Da'iyah, his name is so-and-so. We identify people by, their name. Allah puts his name aside, his name is irrelevant. He comes rushing in, what does he do? What does he say?
For my people, listen to the message.
Yes. He basically supports the da'wah of the messages. Right? Question, has he got any obligation upon him to do this role? 3 messengers present amongst them, sanctioned by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to deliver the message of Islam, to call people to this beautiful way, to call people back to Allah. Has he got any obligation upon him to deliver the message, to do this work right now? No. But he still comes and does it. Now we know from the tafsir that they kill him, right? But Allah doesn't mention how they kill him or that they kill him. Allah just mentions what he does, and the next thing we hear is what? When he's on the other side. And what does he say? What's his words?
If only they knew.
Only if my people knew what? How Allah has honored me. Right? Allah has been raised by Allah to such a great status for this task, this job that he did. Remember brothers, he's not giving the da'wah, he's not walking in the footsteps of the prophets, he's merely supporting the prophets. Right? And look at his reward, look at the honor Allah gave him. Right? Now think about our situation today in the 21st century. How many messengers do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4? 1? How many? How many prophets? 0. Any coming?
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allah.
Last 8 for some snacks, Brother Ansar said, and then we'll resume till around 9 o'clock, inshallah, finish by then. So quickly moving on. So far, just to summarize, we have covered introduction to what da'wah is. We've also covered knowing Allah and how important it is for us to know Allah when we're involved in the da'wah and sharing the message of Islam. We've also covered some motivations for the da'wah as well, right? Now we're going to move on to another very important section, which is the characteristics of a du'at, right? This is probably one of the 2 most fundamental and important sections of this da'wah training course. The characteristics, the character of the individual calling to Islam. If that's not on point, your da'wah is not going to be effective. Right? And it shows a lack of sincerity, if anything, on our part. If our characteristics aren't there, but we're saying we're giving da'wah to Allah, right? So we need to keep in mind and make sure our characteristics are on point. The very first thing, brothers, as with most things, or if anything that we do in our deen, in our lives, is to do with sincerity. Okay? We have to make sure our intentions are in the right place. The da'wah, especially in the 21st century, 2019, is a very, very dangerous occupation. Right? It's not a joke. I have seen brothers get involved in the da'wah and burn out. Right? Just leave the da'wah, end up almost leaving Islam in some cases. It's really, really bad. Right? And the reason being, because when you're involved in the da'wah, like it or not, it's a public-facing activity. Right? You're always going to be public-facing. If you're on a da'wah table, you're still public-facing because your community is looking at you, right? If you're online, people are watching your videos, listening to your lectures, public-facing, right? You can't escape. The da'wah is a public-facing activity, okay? You're always going to be in the public eye, right? And what does that mean now for us? That means that you are going to have to take extra care of your intention, of yourself. Because shaitan, right, on top of, to top things off, you will become, or you will be shaitan's #1 enemy. You will be right at the top of his hit list. Because remember, what's the job of shaitan? Who can tell me what shaitan's job is? What's his role? To misguide. Yeah, to misguide humanity, to take people off the sirat, of the straight path. Right? Shaitan wants to take people away from the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What are you stepping up to do?
Guide.
To guide. The opposite, to bring people onto the straight path. Right? Now can we see a problem here? The work that you're involved in, exactly, you're involved in a job that's going completely in the opposite direction of what shaitan is trying to do. You become his #1 enemy from that perspective. Taking you out is more important than taking out 10, 15 other people. Right? From a list of priorities, if that's what you want to see. So you have to guard yourself and you have to protect yourself. Right? And it all begins with sincerity and ensuring that you keep a check on your sincerity. It's not just a case of saying, okay, September the 21st, 2019, I make an intention to do da'wah for the sake of Allah, and that's it, full stop, and you never look at your intention again. It doesn't work like that, right? Your intention has to be checked every single time you get involved in a da'wah activity. Always keep an eye on it. When you're in a da'wah conversation with someone, always ask yourself in the back of your head, why am I doing this? If you start getting angry, or if you start imposing yourself on someone in a discussion, why am I doing this? Am I doing this because my ego is getting hurt, because someone's talking down to me and I want to look like the bigger person? Or am I still doing this for the sake of Allah? Right? So we have to keep this in mind. We have to make sure that intention is in place. Now, we don't need to get into a discussion about intention or what it is. We've gone through that, we all know what it is. Some practical things to keep in mind, brothers, that may help you along the way in your da'wah. Some things that I've benefited from, the brothers that I've spoken to benefit from, is number one, remind yourself of who Allah is. Yeah? Who you are calling to. A lot of times the reason our intention slips is because our relationship with Allah slips. Right? If our relationship with Allah is not where it has to be, then our intention will not be where it has to be. Right? So remind yourself of who Allah is, and revive and renew your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? And that will really go a long way in helping your sincerity. Number two, remind yourself of who you are. Right? Another big problem that happens is we forget who we are. Right? We look ourselves in the mirror every single morning, right, when we brush our teeth, and we think, mashallah, 6 foot tall, I've always been like this. Yeah? Abdul, whatever your name is, I've always been like this strong person, human being that has the ability to live my life and carry myself and do things and all of this stuff. Yeah? But that's not true. If you were to rewind the tape back 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, right now, if we were to do this in this room right now, what would happen? We would all shrink down. Shrink down to a little child, into a baby, and then into, eventually, a drop of dirty liquid. Right? We all come from a dirty drop of mixed liquid. That's our reality, brothers. Allah tells in the Quran over and over again, He reminds us, خَلَقَ الْإِنسَانَ مِن نُطْفَةٍ. But then what? فَإِذَا هُوَ خَصِيمٌ مُبِينٌ. That Allah created us from a nutfah, this dirty, despised drop of fluid. If we rewind the tape back fast, quickly, right now, all of you, every single one of you will shrink down to a drop of liquid. Literally. That's the reality. Right? But what does Allah say? That this creation that comes from this dirty drop of fluid stands in front of Allah like a challenger, a contender. Challenges Allah. Right? And we may think, oh, it's the atheists that are challenging Allah. No, we can challenge Allah too. If we become arrogant. If we think that we can defend ourselves and we can, support ourselves and take care of ourselves and we don't need Allah. This false sense of dependency. Or independence. Sorry for that. For what I'm saying. So the key thing here is remind yourselves of who you are, because that will really humble you. Reminding yourself that you come from something dirty and you're going back to something dirty. Because another reality is that within 100 years, it's safe to say that every single one of us will be under the ground. Yeah, every single one of us in this room will be under the ground. And we will become a part of the earth. Right? That's the reality. Now if you remind yourself that you're in this position in between these two dirty states, you come from a dirty drop of fluid and you're going back to the dirt, then that really breaks down the ego. Right? And it really humbles us and reminds us we're nothing special. Right? Allah has actually given us an opportunity to worship Him, and now He's giving us the opportunity to get involved in the da'wah for His sake and to gain the rewards that we were discussing before. So why not do this sincerely for the sake of Allah? Why delude ourselves and destroy ourselves by doing this for anyone other than Allah? To get a bit of an ego boost, or to look good, or to be praised. These things are going to mean nothing. How many celebrities do we know of that when they die, within a week, 2 weeks, people forget about them? No one's going to remember you. Right? But we think we're something special. Right? So we have to really remind ourselves of who we are. And really humble ourselves from that perspective. And that will really help with our sincerity too. So remind yourself of who Allah is, remind yourself of who you are. Right? Another thing to keep in mind is maybe memorize the dua that was taught by the Prophet ﷺ. He taught us specific dua to protect us. Memorize one of the du'as for shirk. Right? There's many, you can find authentic du'as in those little du'a books. Memorize one of those and always repeat those so you can protect yourself from falling into shirk. Right? Quickly moving on. Very important character of someone calling to Allah is knowledge. And the key point here, brothers, is we know the Prophet ﷺ said, convey from me even if it's one verse. Right? But let's understand what's being said here. What we're supposed to convey is what we understand, what we know. Don't talk about things that you don't know about. Right? These days, as soon as you get involved in the da'wah, you think you're a philosopher, you think you're a professor, you think you're a doctor, you think you're an engineer, you think you're a faqih, you're a scholar, you become everyone. Right? Don't fall into this trap. Remind yourself that you have a certain scope of knowledge, whatever your speciality is. Say you know Surah Ikhlas properly. Right? If you understand Surah Ikhlas, who's memorized Surah Ikhlas? All of us, alhamdulillah, right? If we know Surah Ikhlas, then just share that with people. But don't fall into the trap of talking about things that you don't know about. Right? Remember the balance again. There's a spectrum. On one side of the spectrum, you have people that say, just give da'wah, forget the knowledge. On the other end, you have people that say, don't give da'wah, it's only for a certain group of people with a certain level of knowledge. The balance is somewhere in the middle, which is, give da'wah, but when you give da'wah, speak about things that you know. Don't go into realms and start discussing things that you have no knowledge about. Right? And that's something you need to check for yourselves. Some general characteristics: be kind and gentle. Now there's a very interesting few verses in the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us about the story of Musa alayhi salam, where he is being sent to go and give da'wah and invite Pharaoh. Right? Now I want you to think about this for a second. Musa alayhi salam is who? He's a prophet of Allah. Which means he is one of the greatest human beings to have ever lived on the face of this earth. One of the best of human beings. Pharaoh, on the other hand, is who? Yeah, he's one of the worst, if not the worst human being to have ever lived. Arguably, right? Now Allah is sending one of the best of human beings to one of the worst of human beings. And how does Allah advise Musa alayhi salam to approach Pharaoh? How does he tell him to conduct his speech?
With kind speech, eloquent speech.
What's the word? Can anyone tell me what the word that's used is? Layyina. Golden layyina. Layyina meaning what? Soft, gentle speech. Really, let's think about it. This is Allah giving advice to Musa alayhi salam. This is not, some human being. Allah is telling Musa alayhi salam to be soft and gentle in his speech to Pharaoh. Think about this, the worst of human beings. Now if Allah is telling one of the best of human beings to be soft and gentle with one of the worst of human beings, how should we be with people that we give da'wah to? None of us are the equivalent of Musa alayhi salam. And we can arguably say no one out there is as bad as Pharaoh. Right? So we have no excuse to be nice to people and gentle in our da'wah. If we're sincerely giving da'wah for the sake of Allah. If we have other intentions, then yeah, by all means, that will be expressed through your characteristics. But if you're genuinely, sincerely doing this for the sake of Allah, we have no excuse except to be gentle and soft in our speech. Right? Aslan, this is foundational. Obviously there will be certain situations, certain scenarios, certain strategic reasons. Maybe you are in a debate with a Christian preacher and the situation is such that if you don't overpower him, obviously still with kindness, but you don't come across as the one that's dominating, it may affect badly the community, the Muslims. There will be certain specific situations, right, which will need to be assessed. But generally speaking, we have to take a very soft and gentle approach in our da'wah. Okay? And something to keep in mind. And unfortunately, we don't see this happening today, a lot of the time. Soft-heartedness, good manners, and a polite tongue. Again, very important to keep in mind. Be soft-hearted. You want to be gentle in your approach to people. Okay, this is a very important point. Is having ego and pride is a barrier to the da'wah. It prevents from connecting with others. Right? We're going to go into this in a lot more detail when we sort of analyze what the human being is, and it's a very important thing we need to cover too. Okay. So again, don't get involved in useless, insincere debates. This goes without saying. That's not our objective. We're there to guide people to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Engage with people on their level. Another very important point. Remember, every single human being is different. Right? One size does not fit all. We're not supposed to have the mindset that we're going to go out and give da'wah and every single time we will have the same exact approach with every single person. Right? So meaning, for example, if you're talking to a professor at a university, would you speak to him like you'd speak to someone on the street?
No.
No. Right? If you're speaking to would you speak to him like you're speaking to some philosophy professor?
No.
No. Simple principle. So speak to people in a way that they understand you. Because remember, the objective is that people worship Allah, not that they're impressed by us. Right? So be soft and gentle in your speech. Very, very important.
Imagine you going to your professor and go, yeah, blood, you know everything about the day, you know.
That's not going to work, is it? That's not going to work, right? It's not going to work. Okay, do not go to extremes. This goes without saying. Our objective is to call people to the worship of Allah. We're not there to, represent or try to discuss deep issues regarding certain views that people may have. And obviously, if someone says something about Islam which is not true and you know it's not true, clarify this for them, right? If they try making links with Islam to certain groups or certain individuals and then crazy things, just tell them Islam does not teach this. But always go back to the foundations, which is very, very important. Inshallah. Da'wah downfalls. So just a quick activity, just so we don't fall into these issues. Now I'm going to give you 3 scenarios. I want you to just analyze them and give me your thoughts. Okay? Here's scenario 1. So you're on your break at work, and your work colleague John asks you a question. Why do Muslims pray? Right? You answer the question as best as you can, but it leads to a follow-up question. Why do you need to wash your feet in the sink when you're doing it? Right? Sometimes you get these questions, right? Can you not just pray them all? Can you not just wash them once a day, whatever the case is? And say there's a follow-up question, you answer that, and they ask you, why do you need extended break on your lunch on Friday? You answer that question, and then they ask you another question. Why do you guys cover your women in a certain way? Right? Say you spend your entire lunch break answering these questions with John. Lunch is over, you go back to your work. What's the problem with this scenario from a da'wah perspective?
More of a reactive one rather than a proactive.
Okay, it's a reactive one. So this is analyzing. What's happened? John's come to your lunch, he's asked you a question, you've answered it. He's asked you another question, you've answered it. He's asked you a third question, you've answered it. He's asked you a fourth question, you've answered it. Lunch is over. Yes, brother.
Well, A, you've got limited time to answer his questions. B, he's asking because he's inquisitive, and you're only supplying certain answers to certain questions.
Okay.
So maybe the better option is to take him outside of work, sit down with him, have an itinerary, go through it, and then answer some of the questions.
Okay, so say that happens. Say you take him out of work. Go for a coffee, go to Costa. You have 3 hours this time. 3 hours, he asks you 30 questions. You answer all those questions, you go home, he goes home. What's still the problem with that scenario?
It's still got,
He's got more questions.
Yeah. Say you spend a day with him. He asks you 150 questions.
You shouldn't be tired of answering his questions for
No, you wouldn't, you shouldn't, technically.
This is part of the
But what is our objective?
we should take the time.
You're going to lose your temper.
You can, that can happen. Yeah, we're human beings at the end of the day. You may just get a bit frustrated eventually. We may run out of answers, because we don't have all the answers. No one has all the answers.
So what you should do is draw him to a basis.
Okay, good.
And then base the answers to his questions on that fundamental basis.
Yeah, good. Okay, now
Or you could end it off with a rhetorical question. When he comes back, he can answer it again.
Okay, so you're going to play ping pong with him. Q&A,
If he's playing games with you, like...
But say he's not playing games, he's just genuinely, like the brother says, he's genuinely inquisitive, he has loads of questions and he's answering. Right? What, from a da'wah perspective, what's the issue here? Answering questions necessarily isn't a problem. But remember, at the end of the day, we have limited time. Right? If you're getting an opportunity to do a job, are you doing the job properly here by just answering these questions? No. What is your job as a
to build a foundation?
Okay, which is to give them what? What's the fundamental knowledge they need to know? Yeah. They need to know that they were created to worship Allah, essentially. Right? That's what you need to get across. If you're just answering these questions, you're not effectively delivering the message of Islam. You're not getting the da'wah done. Right? So what we need to do in our da'wah activity, whenever we get involved in the conversation, is we have to always look for an opportunity to take it back to the foundations, which is who is Allah, what's your purpose. Okay? Once they understand these fundamental things, generally, naturally speaking, most of the times, the other questions people have, they naturally get answered anyway. A lot of the times people have questions because they don't understand who Allah is. That's why they don't really understand why this is being said or why that's being said. But once you can tell them who Allah is, and say for example, if you can explain to them that Allah knows best, He's the all-knowing, we don't, right? As a principle, say you give them this principle. Then if Allah says something and you don't understand it, what should you do anyway?
Accept it.
Yeah, you should accept it, because rationally, if God knows best, you don't, therefore by principle, it makes sense in accepting what God has told you to do. Right? Yes, brother.
Can I just add something?
Yes.
I imagine you're wearing a glasses, okay, a green glasses, and he's wearing a red glasses, okay? He will never be able to see your perspective. Every time you ask a question, every time you answer, he won't see your perspective. What you have to do is first remove his glasses and give him your color glasses, which means let him know about Allah first. Let him know who Allah is. Let him connect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first. And once you know who Allah is and appreciate the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then whatever comes under it, he'll accept.
Yeah. So it's a very important principle here. So, and I think what we're getting across here is that people have a background, right? So they have a certain lens they see the world through, right? So most of the things in Islam, they may not agree with them because it doesn't make sense to them from their worldview, their perspective on life. Because they may have grown up as a secular liberal, they may have secular liberal principles, and according to those principles, you're not going to appreciate a lot of what Islam has to say, right? Or at least some of what Islam has to say, right? So if you give them the right lenses, they'll be able to appreciate what you're saying, and why Islam says what it's saying, and who the authority is, right? So our job is to take them to the foundations. One way of doing this is, say if John comes and asks you a question about praying, why do you pray 5 times a day? Acknowledge the question first. It's a great question, John. I would love to answer it for you. Have you got a few minutes? Sit down with him. Maybe give him a quick answer. But say, John, you know what? I'm sure you have other questions. And for you to really appreciate the answer to these questions, you need to understand some of the fundamentals of Islam first. If you have a few minutes, can I share those with you? And now this is your cue to talk about Allah. Right? So it's a very powerful technique to take whatever questions they have and to redirect the conversation to the foundations. And once you give the foundations to them, most of the time, most of the questions disappear. If they don't, but at least they have the right structure to be able to analyze their questions. And you can provide answers in the end. Right? So our job is to get that fundamental knowledge across. Who is Allah and what's your purpose? Right? Let me give you another scenario. Scenario 2. Your non-Muslim friend from university, David, meets up with you and you get into a discussion over religion. David tells you the reason he does not believe anymore is because he was close to his mother, and when she died, his belief in God also died. After he finishes telling you this, you start giving him a rational argument for God's existence, going through the argument from dependency and the argument of fine-tuning of the universe. And you leave, and your friend Dave leaves. So what's the problem with this scenario? So David, he's gone through a situation, his mother's died, right? And he's having a discussion with you. He's asking you about God, and he stopped believing in God, and he wants to know what's going on with his mother. And you start giving him the argument from dependency, the argument from fine-tuning. What's the issue with this scenario? Yes?
He didn't ask you why he stopped believing in God.
Okay, you didn't engage with him really. Yeah, you didn't ask him why he stopped believing in God, but he's told you with his mother, his belief in God died. So he's told you that information already. Yes.
It wasn't sincere.
It wasn't sincere. Okay, but why do you feel this person is not sincere in his approach? What is he doing wrong?
Fundamental thing is he's lost his belief, so we need to re-establish his belief about God again.
Okay.
Take him back to the basics.
But that's what he's doing. He's giving him the arguments. So is he right in doing that? If he's not, why not?
I think he maybe should have redirected it towards. Obviously, he's suffering from emotional pain. That was one of the precursors of him losing faith in God.
Yep.
So it has to be along that line. You have to kind of empathize with it and give him the answer that he's seeking, rather than redirecting him and fine-tuning it through another sort of knowledge.
Brilliant answer. So look, remember, it all goes back to the point we're talking to human beings. This is the point Brother Ricky made earlier as well. We're not talking to robots. We're going to go through this in a second. Unfortunately, what happens is we have this one set method. Whoever we speak to, we just throw it on them. Right? We think we need to prove the existence of God. He said he doesn't believe in God. I need to prove the existence of God through an argument. Right? But in reality, if we just have that little bit of emotional intelligence and analyze what's going on. Here is a man who's lost his mother. He's emotional. He's broken. With the loss of his mother, he lost his belief in God. So we realize that he stopped believing in God not because of rational reasons, but because of an emotional reason. So the right thing to do as someone giving da'wah here is to address his specific problem. Address his loss. And maybe talk about what happens to people when they pass away. How they will be reunited. They haven't lost them forever. That's what he needs. He doesn't need rational arguments at this point. He couldn't care less about your argument from dependency. Right? You can give him the most strongest rational argument at this point. He couldn't care less. It's not going to help him. And this is the thing, and this is what happens with most atheists. Most atheists are not atheists because of rational reasons. Rationally, they have no reason. There's no good reason to deny Allah. Literally, there's none. But the reason they deny Allah is because emotionally they've gone through something in their life. They've not understood it. They've blamed God for it. But later in life, they've covered this up with some sort of rational garb, a rational cloak. And they act like it's rational reasons they don't believe in God. But in reality, it's emotional. And that's why the proof of this is, when you give them rational reasons for God's existence, do they believe? No. And you know your rational reasons are very strong, very convincing, but they still don't believe. So what's going on? It's not a rational problem. It's something else. And so we're going to go into this now, is that rational arguments are not the be-all and end-all of da'wah, right? Because our objective is to awaken the fitrah. Right? And we're going to touch upon this in a second. Let's just quickly look at the third scenario. So, you're at your weekly Islamic awareness stall, so you're at a da'wah table in the city centre, handing out leaflets on Islam. A lady walks by and politely tells you she's a Christian, that she believes in Jesus and that He is enough for her because He is the Son of God who died for her sins. You quickly reel off Bible verses on how Jesus was not God and that He was ignorant, that she was ignorant of or He was ignorant of the hour. So how is it possible He was God? You say to her with a smile on your face or a bit of a smirk on your face, how weak is your God that He died on a cross? What's the problem here? You're engaging her, you're telling her about Jesus from the Bible.
You're attacking,
Okay, you're attacking. Yeah. So what's the issue with attacking? Sorry?
You're speaking harsh to them.
You're speaking harsh, so what's going to happen when you speak harsh to people? What happens?
Backlash.
Backlash, yeah.
If you mock them, they'll mock you.
Yeah. Because sometimes we think, oh, it's all about the message. How I say is irrelevant. Right? I'm telling you Jesus is not God, I'm taking away from shirk, I've done my job. Right? It doesn't, human beings don't work like that. It's like if I go to a brother inside and I say I love you and I hug him, is he going to feel that love?
Yes.
Okay. Scenario 2, if I go to brother inside, slap him across the head, say I love you. Is he going to appreciate my love?
Yeah.
Even more. Maybe for Bengali Pakistani culture. Maybe that's how we show love. Yeah, maybe not good. Our love is appearance across the head, right?
He does it to me every week at the masjid.
Okay, so we're used to it.
You turning around, yes, you.
Okay, but we get the point, right? Human beings are emotional, right? What you say will have impact if you win their hearts and minds. Look at the Prophet ﷺ. Yeah, he was a mercy to mankind. What does Allah say? If he was harsh towards the companions, what would have happened?
They would have
They would have dispersed, they would have run away, they would have left it. Right? Allah sent him with the best characteristics for a reason. Remember, you're delivering something. This is a funny story a sheikh once told me. There's a village, and there was a man, he had an ear infection. Yeah. Now this guy, he's a simple village guy, he goes to the doctor. Doctor says, okay, you got an ear infection, he prescribes him antibiotics. Right? And doctor says, take these antibiotics 3 times a day, morning, afternoon, evening, and you'll be fine within 3 or 4 days. Yeah? A standard course, right? You got a bit of an infection going on, you get antibiotics. He goes home, comes back the next morning. He says, doctor, it's getting worse, the pain is worse. Now the doctor's thinking, simple village guy, he didn't understand. He said, look, go take it for 3 or 4 days, it will take time to work. Right? Guy goes away, guess what he does next day? Comes back again to the doctor. Doctor, the pain's getting worse, I can't handle it, I can't bear it anymore. This time the doctor thinks, hold on a second, it's been about 2 days, should be getting slightly better. So the doctor looks inside his ear. Guess what he finds inside his ear? The tablets. The guy was stuffing antibiotics into his ear because he thought that's how he was going to be treated. Right? Moral of the story is, the medicine is only effective if it's administered properly. Right? It's very important to understand this principle. If you don't use the medicine properly, it's actually going to do more damage. Right? Our delivery of Islam, remember, you are that medicine. You are that delivery mechanism for the deen. If you do not deliver the message properly, it's not going to have the right desired effect. And we can see the results of that in the media already. Right? We can see the results of that already. We have to deliver the medicine properly. Yes, sir.
Interestingly, the word da'wah comes from the family of da'wah, which means medicine. So we are the one providing medicine to cure the disease or the unsprouted heart.
Yeah, we have that in Bengali. You have the same for medicine? Dua. Da'wah. It's strong. Even in Urdu and Bengali, you have the same word for medicine. Yeah, it comes from the same roots.
So you have that administrated properly.
Yeah, Jazakallah khair, very beautiful point. Yes, go ahead.
I think obviously da'wah is an integral part of our religion. That's what the Prophet Makkah era, he just promoted the concept of Tawheed. But I think as a Muslim it's very important to actually be serious in your own religion. That characteristic is a part of da'wah, because when you are obviously when you're doing salah and stuff like that, when you're going through your peripherals of Islam in front of people, that's when they're going to be inquisitive and they're going to start asking questions. So if people kind of like shy away from the daily acts, I think that's where massive failing is, because of like Islamophobia and those sort of things. People kind of hide the religion.
Yeah. And this is why, going back to the point we talked about earlier, you need the confidence to step up. If you take that, because stepping up for the sake of Allah these days means to having the confidence to represent yourself as a Muslim and to share the message of Islam with people. And when you have that, you'll see things will start to change. Because most people are sheep. Most people follow. There's very few leaders. I'm telling you, we think non-Muslims judge us and think bad of us and this. Maybe they have these things, but if you step up as a leader with confidence, not arrogance, confidence, because this is what the prophets had. They had this beautiful balance. They were confident, but they weren't arrogant. Right? They were certain of what Allah had given them, but they were not arrogant. If we can try to emulate those characteristics, trust me, people will follow. People will follow. Yeah? It's a very important thing. So hopefully we get the point here that our da'wah, we have to consider the human being and really understand who we're speaking to. This goes to our next point. Let's just go to, just get to the side. Okay. So this is a very important slide and something I need to understand. When we're giving da'wah to people, we're talking to human beings. That's the whole point of the 3 scenarios we covered. We're not talking to robots. It's not a case of input, output. You put in rational arguments and they take the shahada. It doesn't work like this. Yeah? They are not robots. They are human beings who have lived an entire life. They have life experiences. Yeah, we think, someone comes to the da'wah stall and we think this person, Allah has just made this person pop into existence just right now. Right? No, they've lived a whole life. They've had life experiences that have shaped them, that have shaped their views and their beliefs. We have to respect that. Right? We have to understand them and really understand something about them and what they're all about and what affects them. And what, if they don't believe in God, why don't they believe in God? What happened in their life? Right? We have to consider all of these things. Because, see, the human being, a robot is simple, it's programmed, right? There's input and output, without reflection, without contemplation, no feelings, no emotions, right? A human being is comprised of different elements. It's the aql, the nafs, the ruh, the qalb, the fitra, right? And the human being has the ability to contemplate and to reflect and to feel. This is what we're dealing with. We're not dealing with robots, right? And if we understand the human being is comprised of all of these things, we have to treat humans like humans, right? And we have to realize that we are trying to awaken the fitrah of the human being. Now, just quickly about the fitrah. Who can tell me what the fitrah is?
It's a natural instinct that's built into us of our Creator.
Okay, so it's a natural instinct. Anyone else that wants to add to that? Fitrah. Fatara, you have other words that come from the same root as well. So we know Allah is Al-Fatir, the originator, the one that begins. We have iftar, for example, fasting, it also comes from the same root, which means to break and to split, it has that meaning too. But what is the fitrah? When we say the fitrah of the human being, what's the meaning here? What's the understanding here?
Innate nature.
Okay, the innate nature. The original nature, the first nature of the human being, which Allah created every single human being upon. Right? We're in chapter 30, verse 30. Where Allah says, Fitrat Allah, fitrah of Allah, that He created the person, the human. Now, this fitrah, brothers, this fitrah comprises of knowledge, innate knowledge. Right? Now, it's something we need to understand here. The world that we live in today, through our schooling and education systems, we are taught that knowledge comes from external sources, right? Knowledge is to be acquired, that's what we're taught. And the two predominant routes to knowledge that we're taught are reasoning, through the aql, the intellect, which is generally philosophy. Philosophers take this route. Or there is empiricism, science, which is you use your faculties that we have, sight, hearing, all of these things, and we observe and study the world around us, right? Now, what we generally do is that knowledge comes to the human being through these two means, reasoning and studying the physical world, empiricism. So, in other words, we're taught that knowledge is acquired, you are a blank slate, right? However, Islam teaches us different. There is a third type of knowledge, which is innate knowledge, knowledge which is embedded within every single human nature, into the fitrah. Now, some of the scholars have elaborated upon this. They've mentioned that a basic understanding of right and wrong is also a part of the fitrah. That's why even atheists, if there was atheists in this room right now, and if I asked them, is it wrong to kill an innocent child? Every single sane atheist would say yes. But you can't rationalize it. On atheism, you can never rationalize it. You can never prove it. But they know it's wrong. Why do they know? They know from a fitri perspective. Right? But what we need to be, what's relevant for us is that the fitrah also contains the knowledge of Allah and that He deserves worship. These two things are already embedded within the human soul, within the fitrah. Right? Now, where the fitrah is located, it's not our discussion. Allah knows best. Right? As far as I've looked into it, what we can say is that, from my understanding, and I may be wrong, the fitrah, the nature, is a part of the human soul, meaning it's a part of the metaphysical. It's not a part of the physical body, it's a part of the non-physical. But it's a part of the human being. Right? It's in the human being. But that's irrelevant. The point is that the fitrah is there, and the knowledge of Allah is there, and that He deserves worship. Some of the scholars even linked it to the ayat in the Quran where Allah speaks about when He brought us forth from Adam. And Allah asked us, what did He say? Am I not your Lord? And we said, yes, you are our Lord. We testified. And it was that event that left an imprint within the human soul of that knowledge. That's where it was imprinted and embedded within the human soul. That Allah exists and He deserves worship. Because the word used there is Rabb. A Rabb means what? It doesn't just mean creator. Maintainer and sustainer, provider, the one that gives. And therefore, it makes sense to the human being that the one that gives must be worshipped. The one that provides and sustains us must be the one that is worshipped. Right? So the knowledge of Allah and that He deserves worship was embedded at that point within us. And it's a lengthy discussion, there's a lot more you can look into for homework, but the key point I want to take away here is that the knowledge of Allah is already within human beings. Now how does that change our da'wah? One thing we should know from this is that when we're engaging with human beings and we're calling them to Allah, we're not teaching them anything new. We're not teaching them something they don't know. We're simply reminding them of something they already know. We're trying to trigger and awaken the truth which is within them already. Does everyone understand this point? It's a very important point. You're not giving them new knowledge that God exists and they didn't know. They already know Allah is there and is a reality. But they have forgotten, it's become covered, it's become clouded. What did the Prophet ﷺ say? Every child is born upon the fitrah, but it's his parents that make him a Jew, a Christian, or a fire worshipper, a Magian or a Magi. Right? Every child is born upon the fitrah, but it's his parents that take him away from that fitrah. Extend it out, every human being is born upon this pure fitrah, which has the knowledge of Allah, but it's his society, his upbringing, his environment, his parents that take him away from the straight path. Right? But the knowledge is there, it's covered. Normally I like to do a thought experiment, and let's just do it and really help you guys understand this concept. Everyone clear your minds for a second. Everyone's mind's clear, yeah? Now I want you to quickly, I know it's hard for some people to do, but I want you to quickly, when I say I want you to quickly think about, do it now, I want you to quickly think about your favorite childhood toy or your best friend in childhood. Quickly, when you've done it, put your hand up. Favorite childhood toy or your best friend in childhood? Got one? Yeah? Now as you think about that person or that toy, can you remember certain events that took place? Can you remember certain days or times you played with that toy or spent with your friend? Maybe times you upset each other. Maybe when your brother or sister broke your toy and you started crying. Do you remember those things, right? Can you remember those sort of feelings that were associated with that? Right? Now let me ask you guys a question. Was that a reality? Yes. Is that true that that happened for you? Yes. Now what's interesting is before I asked you that question, all of you weren't thinking about that thing. Many of you probably haven't thought about that person or that toy for many years. But just because you had no recollection of it, does that mean that truth wasn't within you? It was there. It's just come out now. And why did it come out? Because I triggered it with the right question. Now the fitrah works in a very similar way, brothers. Is that the fitrah, knowledge of Allah is there, but it's become covered. You have to use the right techniques to try and awaken the fitrah within the human being, within the person. What that would be will be different for different people, right? So just quickly, let's just move to this section. So now we've got to the point where we're here now. We know there's a fitrah. We know the fitrah could be awakened, it could be triggered. But there's no one key that opens the lock of the fitrah in every single human being. Different things will trigger different people. Up until recently, we see there's been a trend in the Da'wah where it's all been about rational arguments, right? Give rational arguments to someone, they accept Islam. Doesn't work like that in reality. Right? There is one of the keys that we cover is the key of rational arguments. It may be you're speaking to someone that needs a rational argument and that's what works for them and that's what awakens the truth for them. But it may not be. For another person it may be experience. Positive and negative experiences. Another person may be just spirituality. Right? For another person it may just be reflection and introspection. Another person it may be just good character. We've heard of stories where someone a Muslim has shown really beautiful characteristics and someone has accepted Islam because of it. For some people it may be revelation. Right? So these are different keys that can awaken the fitna. And the way we need to think about the da'wah is, each person you speak to, what's going to work with this person? And the way you find that out is how? You get to know the person. Right? So it's not just, you can't just have this cold interaction with human beings anymore. You need to spend a few minutes to get to know the person. Who are they? What are they about? What are their interests? What are their likes? What are their dislikes? What do they go through in their life? Really engage with the people. As if they're family. Because they are. They are brothers and sisters in humanity. We can't treat them as outsiders. If we truly care about them, we're doing this sincerely for the sake of Allah. We have to genuinely see them as our brothers and sisters in humanity, which are heading towards a direction we don't want to go in, and we don't want them to go. So we have to genuinely get to know them so we can get this information. So, let's quickly look at, don't worry about this is not relevant right now. Let's quickly look at some of the keys. So the first key is the key of rationality, right? Normally for the key of rationality we use the GORAP approach, right? Now the GORAP approach stands for G-O-R-A-P, which G stands for God's existence, O stands for oneness, R stands for revelation, A stands for just or you can use it for akhirah, or the afterlife, and P stands for prophethood, okay? Now remember, we're talking about rational keys. So you've gone into discussion with someone, and they're an atheist, and they want rational arguments. They're all about reason and rationale. That's just the way they've been brought up, okay? With them, the first thing you want to find out is, do they believe in God? If they believe that there is a superpower, some sort of energy, then you don't need to start here, because that's already there. You move to the next one. Now you want to establish oneness. And that, from an Islamic perspective, this is a very important one. Clarify oneness, and we've done that already in the beginning, right? Maybe they believe that there's a power that's one, singular, uniquely one. In that case, you miss both of these, you go straight to revelation. You show that this power, this creator, has given us revelation. Right? So you want to assess the person even now, the assessment gets deeper. Because you don't want to be talking about God's existence with someone that already believes in God's existence. Yeah? You don't want to waste time, their time and your time. If they say they don't believe in God, now you can use many arguments to establish God's existence. Normally a simple one that we use is a simple design argument. Now let me give you an analogy which will help you understand this argument, inshallah. What do I have in my hand? Bottle. Okay. Guys, before you came into this room, I'm going to tell you a story. Yeah, it's a true story. Before you came here, before I came here earlier today. Right? And I was sitting here, Brother Ansar wasn't here, no one was here. And as I was sitting down, that window was open. And as I'm sitting here, I see pieces of plastic flying through the window. They came in, they were floating in the air. Right? And they started to spin around in the air. And as they started to spin around, they formed into this bottle. Why are you guys laughing? What's so funny?
It's not rational.
Hey, so just let me finish the story, right? I mean, take me seriously, bro. So the bottle forms, and then suddenly a hole opens in the roof, and water comes into the bottle. And then as the water fills up, suddenly from that room, a cap comes and just screws itself to the top. And a label comes from underneath the ground, and it just wraps itself around the bottle. And this bottle formed itself. Who believes me? May Allah help you, brother.
I swear it happened, bro.
Okay. Any sane human being would not believe that story. Yeah? Now let me ask you why. Why would you not believe that the bottle can form itself or create itself? Or come from nothing? Why wouldn't that happen?
Because everything is true.
Okay, but let's talk about the bottle. Why does this bottle need a designer or a creator? Why? What is it about the bottle that tells you that?
It holds the water.
Good. Okay, it holds the water. It serves a purpose, right? It holds water. What else?
It's designed in a specific way.
Okay, it has a certain shape, right? It's designed in a specific way. What else?
Made of certain material.
Made of certain materials that come together and form a bottle. Good. What else?
The way the cap is screwed onto it is so the water doesn't flow.
Brilliant. So the way the cap is screwed on is done in a way that if it's functioning in a way the water doesn't fall out. Good. What else?
It's got mango on there. It states it's water.
Okay, it's got a label. It's got information on it, right? It states it's water. Good. What else?
It quenches first.
It quenches thirst. Okay, good. So we can see what we've done. We've just sat in this room, you've sat in your chairs, you've analysed what I've said, and you've told me it's wrong, and you've given me reasons why. Human beings have this ability to rationalise and understand things that are designed and created. Right? Now you've looked at the bottle, you've analysed the bottle, and you quickly told me that the bottle must have a creator. And then later on you thought about it and you told me the reasons why. It has a shape, it has symmetry, it has a purpose, it has water, it has a lid, X, Y, and Z. Right? Now all you have to do is when you're giving da'wah to someone about God's existence, you can just use something they're wearing. If they're wearing glasses, if they have a bag, just ask them, could your bag create itself and make itself? Could your bottle make itself? They'll say, no, that's stupid. Ask them why it's stupid. They'll give you these reasons just like we've stated. And then all you have to do is just show them, if a simple bottle or a simple pair of glasses cannot make themselves, then how about the entire universe? How can we say this entire universe, which is far more complex than the bottle or the glasses, can make itself or arrange itself? Do you see the logic? Very simple point. If a simple bottle needs a creator and a designer, what about the universe? Must surely have a creator. Yeah? Very, very simple argument that you can use to establish God's existence. Is there a question more?
Yeah, I think with atheists, they kind of rely on evidence, don't they, a lot?
Yeah.
They say, well, where's the evidence? Well, because the belief part isn't there. They don't want to believe in something that they don't want to see.
But this is the thing, so this is the next point. You can give them the most strongest rational argument you know. If they don't want to believe, they're not going to believe. Yeah? And if they reject something as sound, as simple as this, simple reason, like the type of reason you use in your day-to-day life, right? Like, would you cross the road blindfolded? No. Common sense, yeah? Use common, see, this is what they do. When it comes to common sense, but here's the thing, is there a chance you'll survive if you cross the road blindfolded? Yes. Of course there's a chance. Would you take the chance? No. Because it's very likely you will die, right? Now they may say, oh, there's a chance the universe can make itself. Why is it when it comes to God, your standards go through the roof, but with everything else you have a certain standard? Right? It shows us again that there's something else that's going on. Now in this scenario, brothers, say you give a simple argument like this, and the atheist says, no, I don't accept it. What would you do in this scenario? Would you carry on making the argument?
Take a different approach to it.
Exactly. Who said that? MashaAllah, brilliant. Because why? We've understood that there may be deeper reasons. It's a human being. He's covering up and saying, oh, I need rational reasons, but really something else is going on, which is still making him deny something which is logical and rational. Then you take a different approach, take a different key. For that we need to maybe assess him, ask him some more questions, find out about him. Maybe it'll be a case, you know what, forget the argument, let's go for pizza. Or let's go for a cup of tea. You know, or how's your relationship with your parents? You know, did you go through something in your life which really made you resent God or hate God? Ask these deeper questions, it'll trigger them, it'll get them to think about these things, right? So God's existence, simple, you can use simple arguments. Oneness, again, oneness is something which is very natural. But Allah gives us many, there's a very beautiful passage in the Quran where Allah says, if there were, I don't remember the reference to the verse, but Allah says, if there were other gods besides Allah within the heavens and the heavens and the earth both would have been completely destroyed. Right? Very simple argument Allah makes. If there was other gods, everything would be destroyed. Right? Now there's no analogy you can make to Allah, but think about it. How many chief architects of a building project? One. Right? How many head teachers of a school? One. How many kings of a kingdom? One. Right? Generally speaking, there's always one in authority. These are limited human beings. Right? What about Allah, God? Because God does not compromise with anything or anyone. God is the one that overpowers. Right? So it can only make sense that there's one God. Because if there's more than one God, what would have happened? Yeah, they would never agree with it. Because if God agrees with something else, that's no longer God. Because God is then dependent upon someone else. Allah is not dependent upon anything or anyone else. Yes.
That's it. I've got a question. Like,
yeah.
You know, they say if God was merciful, then why is there so much hatred in this world? Like, why is there so much war?
Yeah.
So what would we say to that?
So that's the problem. That's the problem of evil, right? That's a very common thing atheists bring, right? The issue here is they take a very Christian approach to Islam, because according to Christianity, God is only love. God is the most loving. God is love. That's what they say. But in Islam, we know Allah has names and attributes, right? So we know Allah is the most loving, He's the most merciful, but we also know Allah is the wise. Right? Therefore, wisdom manifests itself. So therefore there will be wisdom behind things that happen in this life. So if some difficulty comes, say someone goes through a trial or tribulation, there is wisdom behind that. Allah knows what the wisdom is, we may not know. Now here's the problem, just because we don't know the wisdom behind something, say someone gets cancer, right? They may not be able to understand the wisdom behind that. But Allah knows the wisdom. Just because they can't see the wisdom, does that mean there's no wisdom there? No. And if they say, oh, I can't see the wisdom, therefore there's no wisdom, well then now they're making themselves God, right? From that perspective. It's about humility, it's about understanding that also it goes back to the point that this life is a test. We will be tested in many different ways, right? Now, at the end of the day, Allah wants good for His creation. And we know this. When people come out, how many cancer survivors have gone on to do great things for cancer research and other things? Right? Many. How many ex-alcoholics have gone on to develop programs to save people from alcohol? Look at the good that's come out of it. Now, if they had just given up at that point, would they have done all these great things afterwards? No. So there's always wisdom behind things. Just because you can't see it doesn't mean there's no wisdom there. But it's a bigger point. We can maybe address it in the Q&A. So we've covered God's existence. We've covered oneness. When it comes to revelation, this you guys can look up. There's lots of proofs for revelation, right, online. One of the greatest proofs of revelation, which you should normally start with, is the message itself. Because the message of the Quran is very, very powerful, right? But we very underplay it in our da'wah sometimes. We don't really utilize it as a proof. And then when it comes to prophethood, let me just show you guys here. Give me a second. For prophethood, we have a very powerful argument. By the way, this is a really good book when it comes to the Quran and the proofs of the Quran. We have it free. So all you have to do is if you go to IERA Da'wah or onereason.org, you can find it. It's free, you can order it and we can send it out to you, inshallah. Especially if you want to use it for the da'wah, we can send you in bulk as well, inshallah. All you'll have to pay for is postage and packaging. The books are free, inshallah. But this is one of the best books on the miracles of the Quran. It's brilliant. A brother wrote a very knowledgeable brother. It's an excellent book on the topic. Okay, so when it comes to prophethood, there's a very simple argument that we use. So we know from our tradition, we know many of the scholars, they would make the case for Islam based on prophethood itself. So this was the route they would take to make a case for Islam and prove Islam is true, based on the Prophet ﷺ, right? Now, this is a very simple historical argument, right? Which is that when it comes to the life of the Prophet ﷺ, he's probably, you can argue, the most well-documented man in history. Okay? We know everything about the Prophet ﷺ that we need to know. How he walked, how he smiled, how he sat, how he ate, how he drank water, everything. We have all the details. I can't think of any other human being in history that has been recorded as well, whose life has been recorded as well, right? Now, based on that, there's only 3 possibilities to the claim that the Prophet ﷺ made. Now, his claim was what? What was the claim of the Prophet ﷺ? I am the messenger of Allah. This was his claim. When it comes to that claim, there's 3 possibilities, historically speaking. Number 1, he was lying, right? Number 2, he was mad or deluded. Or number 3, he was telling the truth. There is no other option. There is one other option, but it's a very silly one, but we'll touch upon it. And these are the real 3 options. Any honest person, historically, if you look at the life of the Prophet, peace be upon him, there's only these 3 possibilities to his claim. Now, could he be a liar based on what we know about his life?
No.
No. Okay, why not? Give me some examples. Give me some reasons based on what we know about his life.
His trade, that people used to say he was the most truthful one when he was...
Okay, good. So he's known as the trustworthy, the truthful amongst his people. Before prophethood even, right? This was his title.
Yeah. So they called him Al-Amin.
Yeah.
But even with that, even the Jews that despised him, they used to leave their belongings with him, yes, when they were traveling.
That's a very powerful proof, bro. Because think about it, and always contextualize it for people. Take that point the brother made, that when the Meccans, the ones that hated him, his enemies, would leave belongings with the Prophet ﷺ when they would travel. So they didn't like his message, they rejected it, they were opposing him, but they would trust him with the belongings. Put that in a modern context. It's like saying you're going to Bangladesh for 6 months, yeah? You hate your neighbor, but you leave your house keys with him. Who would do that? You would never do that, right? No, the only reason you do that is if you trust someone to a level more than you trust yourself, right? the fact that the non-believers would leave their belongings with the Prophet ﷺ is testament to his honesty and his truthful character. Right? Any other reasons he could not be a liar? Why he couldn't be a liar? Any other reasons? Any other events from his life? Any other points that we can learn and use?
Alluding to his miracles and stuff.
Okay. Anything specific?
His march towards Khadija.
What about that?
Like she had that trust in him.
Good.
He was
Yeah.
trading with her. And
So one of the traits, one of the reasons she wanted to marry the Prophet was this beautiful characteristics of being honest and truthful. Good, very good. Anything else?
The Quran itself.
Quran itself, absolutely.
Because in Saudi, in Arabia, we got no seas.
Yep.
We got no sea in Arabia, and he said in the Quran,
Yes.
and we discovered it.
Absolutely. So there's knowledge in the Quran which was not available to the Arabs at the time, right? So that's and prophecies is another one. A liar does not have true prophecies.
No.
So if you look at many examples from his life, he was known as the truthful and trustworthy. People trusted him.
his miracle with like splitting the moon in half as well.
Yeah, people witnessed that, right? So all of these things, you could build a very strong case to suggest and show that he could not have been a liar. Now look at the second one. Could he be mad or deluded?
One of the specific verses in the Quran about Abu Lahab.
Yes.
And at the time when he was doing the Da'wah, and the verse was revealed about Abu Lahab.
Yes.
Saying that this guy, he will surely be destined for the hellfire, and his wife will feel the fire.
Yes.
And at that time, if he just took the Shahada,
Yeah.
that would negate everything.
Yeah, all you have to do to disprove everyone is just take the shahada. And people were known to do that at the time as well, to enter Islam just for the sake of it. The hypocrites, Allah speaks about them in Al-Baqarah. You know, they say we believe, but they don't actually believe. They actually mock. So people were doing that. He could have done that, but that's another prophecy. Deluded. Let's touch upon this one quickly. Why could he not have been a liar? Oh, sorry. Why could he not have been mad or deluded? Think about mad people. Where do you find mad people?
In asylum seekers.
Yeah. In mental asylums. Yeah. It's not asylum seekers, bro. You're gonna have problems if you say that here.
He's one of those.
We know what he's saying. But yeah, mental asylum, absolutely. Do you see mad people leading communities, being military leaders, being a family man, you know, being a spiritual leader? No. Leading a world religion that billions of people. You don't find mad people doing this. His being as a human being, as he was, his characteristics, the way he was, who he was, could not have been a mad person. Any other reasons, specific examples that show he could not be mad?
It's a time when he was all three combined together, disproved in one parliament. The Quraysh came to him when they knew that Islam was being established, people were taking the Shahada, and they offered him everything in the world.
Yes.
At the time, you imagine somebody coming to you offering you food and offering you power.
Yep.
See what a man desires anyway, that's what he wants about. And he refused all of them.
Yeah,
So in that case, he's not a liar. He wasn't deluded, he didn't take it like that. He was truthful to her at the same time.
Yes.
And so he's all three truthful.
Absolutely beautiful point. Because like the psychology of a liar is that a liar lies for a reason. Yeah, you don't just lie for the fun of it. Most sane people don't do that, right? Some people may, but most people don't. But if he's offered everything, this is your opportunity to say, I want this, this, and this. Thank you very much. I'll stop the message. But he rejected everything worldly for the message, which shows that he was not lying. He had nothing to gain from a worldly perspective for this. And if he was deluded, like the brother said, the deluded person would just say yes or whatever. Right? They're not consistent. But he was consistent from that perspective. Right? So he could not be a liar, he could not be deluded. Therefore, what's the only conclusion? He was telling the truth. Right? So it's a very simple, logical way. A process of elimination, you can eliminate the options and you end up with the last option, which is telling the truth. Right? So that's from a rational perspective. Now, just quickly, you can use the key of experience as well. So maybe the person is not rational. Maybe you're speaking to a person who lives their life based on experiences. It's all about experiences and events in their lives for them. With that type of person, you may want to remind them of certain experiences in their life. Was there ever a time in your life where you were going through a crisis and you turned to God? Most people, you'll be surprised, most people at some point in their life have turned to God and have called out to God. You know, and have spoken to God and tried to communicate with God and ask God for something. Take them back to that event. Allah gives us an example I don't know which surah, when they're seeing high waves come over them. And they fear for their life, these people, and what do? They call out to Allah in sincere faith. Right? At that moment, it's not about rational arguments for them, it's about survival. And they realize death is staring them in the face, the only one that can help them is Allah. So they call out to Allah. The fitrah, the switch flips and the fitrah is awakened. Right? And when Allah brings them to safety, very few of them remain on that truth. They just turn back.
Or on a plane, you know, when a plane starts shaking, oh my God, oh my God.
Turbulence. There's a famous English saying, an idiom, there's no atheist on a sinking ship. Why is that? It's a reality. When the turbulence hits, or the plane is, the boat is starting to experience waves, everyone starts calling out to God. Right? It's just natural. The fitrah gets triggered. So it could be negative experiences, it could be positive experiences. We've heard stories of people going to Muslim countries, hearing the adhan, you know, being moved by that, something being triggered and awakened within. And then they learn a bit more and they become Muslim. Right? So experiences can be a powerful tool to awaken the fitrah, key. Negative and positive experiences. Let's move on. Positive experiences, it's fine. So the key of reflection, some people are more reflective, right? Some people are the sort of poetic philosopher types, they like to just reflect and ponder upon things. Just get them to reflect, ask them questions. Look at this entire heaven, look at the stars, look at the moon, where do these things come from? Right? Very simple points. Allah makes mention of these in the Quran as well. Right? Inna fi khalqi samawati wal ardi wa ikhtilafi al-layli wan nahari la ya'ti ulil albab, for people of lub. Right? There's signs in the creation of the heavens and the earth, and the change in the alternation of the night and day. Change in alternation of the night and day is pointing towards what? The function of the universe. Reflect over its function. You know, there's a very interesting thing someone said, where I don't know if there was research done, but they showed that you'll find more atheists within cities where there's more lights, you know, artificial light and buildings. And the more further you get out towards the countryside and rural areas, the more believers you'll find. And one of the reasons is because when there's a lot of city light, artificial light, you can't see the stars in the night sky. But when you go out to the countryside, if you've been to somewhere where there's just rural, open area at night, and you look up at the stars, you can see them really clearly, and there's less pollution there. And it just blows your mind when you look at the stars. Who put those there? Who is controlling all? Who created all of this? Yeah. So it's just reflection, getting people to reflect and introspect about simple things. Where did they come from? Who made you? Right? Simple questions, get them to reflect. Another key is the key of spirituality, right? But just for the sake of time, I want to quickly touch upon one more key, which is the key of the Quran. And this is probably one of the most, if not the most, key of character. We've touched upon this already, right? The good character, brothers, would go such a long way in your da'wah. Right? You've probably experienced this already. You know, there's a very famous story that we always use, where there was a table in Stratford in London, and there was a brother, and he would run the table, and he didn't have much knowledge. He knew very little, right? He could hardly speak, as far as I know, right? English, it wasn't his first language. Now he was at a da'wah table once, and a lady came to the table, and she started to sort of swear at him and abuse him, throw literature at him, and she spat on his face, right? She spat on his face, and the spit lands on his face. Now put yourself in this situation, what would you do in this scenario?
Knock her out.
Yeah, you knock her out, or you'll react.
Knock her out?
But at the very least you'll get angry and you'll swear back or say something. Yeah? You know what this brother did? He keeps smiling, he's got a smile on his face, he spits, he's still smiling, goes into his pocket, takes a tissue, wipes his face, goes into his other pocket, gets another tissue and gives it to her because she still has spit on her face. He gives it to her, she takes the tissue and runs away. Right? She comes back a few weeks later, listens to him, becomes Muslim, and they get married. True story.
They're getting ideas, yeah! They're getting ideas!
Look at the reaction on the married part, yeah? Marriage. Brothers, let's put a disclaimer here. Let's put a disclaimer here. The marriage is not the objective. Remember, we talked about intention is for the sake of Allah, and not for the sake of the marriage. But it just goes to show the power and impact of good character. Yeah? She probably went away, and she was, because remember, when someone does something nasty like that to you, they're expecting a reaction. But when she sees you react in this way, she probably couldn't sleep for a few days. Maybe she was thinking about this for a few weeks. Why did this man react like this? I want to know why he reacted like this. Went back, asked, became Muslim. So the power of good characteristics. Yeah, very, very powerful. Oh, by the way, same table, let me give you the opposite end of the spectrum. Very same table, a few years later, group of brothers giving da'wah there, right? Now, 2 police officers come, they give them da'wah, right? 2 of the brothers at the table. The police officers are so happy with the conversation, they take material. Now, if you're a police officer on duty, you don't have to take material. You shouldn't take material, but they take material. They go away. Now, there's a few other brothers at the table. Before they go away, there's a man and a woman, male officer and a female officer. Now, the male officer says thank you to the brother, puts his hand out, shakes his hand. The female officer also puts her hand out. Now, the brother at the table, obviously in the moment, he didn't know what to do, just put his hand out and shook her hand, right? There's another brother at the table, he's watching this, yeah? Soon as they walk off, he comes over to him and says, brother, haram, why did you do this? Starts arguing with him, yeah? Now, if you want to advise him, do it nicely off the table. There's people watching, yeah? Give him some techniques on how to deal with this next time. But starts arguing with him. They start fighting on the table. There's 2 other brothers, I think they were Bengali, don't quote me. They come over, they start defending the brother that's originally at the table. The other brother gets angry, throws a punch, knocks one of them out, the other one throws another punch, it turns into a fight. The same 2 police officers come and arrest them. So this shows you character, yeah? Good character, bad character, the impact that it can have. Yeah? Same table as palm. Yeah? And these are lessons for us. Yeah, exactly. But this shows we have to have that hikmah when we're giving da'wah. You want to advise a brother, remember there's a context. Look at what's happening. There's people around, they're watching, they're looking at you, you're Muslim, they're already suspicious of you. Last thing you do is throw punches and start getting aggressive at a table. Yeah? Go away, advise the brother nicely, there's better ways of dealing with things. Yeah? But it just shows you what character can do. And finally, the key of revelation, this is probably one of the most powerful keys, and there's something that's very underutilized in the da'wah, which is the Quran. Right? The Quran contains all of the other keys. The Quran speaks about experiences. The Quran gives rational arguments. Right? The Quran mentions good characteristics and the power of good characteristics. Brother was mentioning the characteristics of Yusuf alayhi salam on the way here, and the way his mercy and forbearance towards his brothers, and the way it changed their hearts after what they did to him. Right? So the Quran encapsulates all of these keys, and that's why the Quran is probably the most powerful key that we have. But we don't use it enough in the da'wah. And it's a shame, brothers, because when you see Jehovah's Witnesses knocking on your door, or when you see Christian preachers, what do they always have with them?
The Bible.
The Bible. Where is the Bible?
In their hand.
Under their armpit, yeah, or in their hand. Every single time. They don't know what they're talking about. Yeah, most of the time. They're making things up. But they always carry the Bible. They always refer to the Bible.
The
stickers, highlight, yeah, exactly. Exactly. But when did we do this with the Quran last? Fine, we don't understand the Arabic. When do we take English translation of the Quran and study in a way we make it a da'wah Quran? We highlight verses. This verse talks about Allah's oneness. This talks about His mercy. This talks about His love. This talks about the problem of evil. This talks about good character. When did we do that for our da'wah? Out of all of the Speaker's Corner videos you have seen in your life, and hopefully it's not been many, how many times have you seen a da'iyah holding a Quran with them or sharing the Quran? Probably not many times. We don't even carry the Quran in the da'wah. That's a big problem. When they have something which has been changed and distorted, we have something that's preserved. So really, one thing you want to do today for your da'wah is just take a copy of the Quran, English translation, and just mark it up. Just use it as your da'wah Quran. It'll help you and it'll help your da'wah as well, inshallah. Okay? And that's pretty much it, brothers. So, last thing you want to do is say you've used one of these keys, and because you've assessed the person, you've got into a da'wah conversation, you've assessed the person, you've realized, okay, this person needs rational arguments, for example, you've given them the argument, it's awakened something within them. They agree, okay, there must be a creator, there must be God. What do you do at this point? At this point, what you want to do is you want to go back to reminding them of who Allah is, who is their creator, right? Simple way of doing this is you go to Surah Ikhlas, right? Go straight to Surah Ikhlas. Let's see if I've got it here. Okay, it's not here. But go straight to Surah Ikhlas and just tell them what Allah tells us about Himself. That He is uniquely one, that He's the one that's completely independent and eternal and everything is dependent upon Him. He has no children, He wasn't born, He has no beginning, He has no end, and that there is nothing like Him. Remind people of who Allah is, and then after you've done that, remind people of what their purpose is. Because that's a big question people have. What's my purpose? Who am I? Right? We have to remind people of their purpose. Tell them, this Creator made you to worship Him. You were created to worship God, and through worshiping God, what are you going to gain? You're going to find peace and tranquility in this life, and you're going to find Jannah, paradise in the next life. You have to sell it to them. You have to remind them of what they're here for. Right? Clarify this with them, give them more information, and they're ready at the end of it, then take the Shahada. Yeah? You can even offer it to them if you feel they're ready. If they're not ready, don't push too much. Give them this space and time. Take their number and stay in touch with them. Right? Stay in touch with them, give them this space to breathe and think things through, and they'll get back to you, inshallah. If not now, maybe in 10 years' time, they'll become Muslim, inshallah. Right? So, that's pretty much it in a nutshell, brothers. Any questions, and we can wrap up, inshallah. Any specific questions for what we've covered or anything like that?
Just to remind everyone that Brother Murtaza will be here next Thursday, inshallah, same time.
Yep.
And he's going to talk about the new Muslim mentorship. So next week, Thursday, the second course will follow to complete this.
Inshallah. Last thing I would say, brothers, is we've gone through this. Inshallah, I know we have to rush through some sections, but hopefully it's given you some food for thought and some very important key concepts and ways to engage with people. You have to put this into practice now, right? You know, I really urge Brother Ansari, so I know he set up a team. Please join him. You know, if you're interested in joining the table, it's probably once a week or something. Maybe start off once a week, once every 2 weeks. Just go out into the town centre and just speak to people, engage with people. Even if it means handing out leaflets to start. But do something. Because we know, brothers, everything happens in life for a purpose. You know, Allah's planned every single moment of our existence. These few moments we spent together was planned by Allah as well. Right? Allah was not on vacation and He said, okay, we just ended up in a Da'wah course. Yeah? Allah's planned this and He's watching every single move of ours. And He knows the things that we're thinking right now. And He's probably, you know, thinking, He knows what sort of thoughts are going through our heads and where we're going to engage with this and how we're going to use this. And we will be accountable for this time that we spent here and how we use it. So please do something with this. If it's about joining Brother Ansar with the Da'wah, do that, inshallah. If it's some other thing you want to do with the Da'wah, please do that. Support each other and start something in this community, inshallah. It'll be very powerful. And inshallah, loads of non-Muslims will benefit. And they need the message. You're not giving them something they don't need, they actually need this. And they're desperate for this. But what it's going to take is a bunch of confident brothers and Muslims to go out there and speak for the sake, for the sake of Allah.